Chapter 142. Go to the net. Early in the morning, Shenhui, who was on summer vacation, was bored, so she went to the Dongxing building to play with her cousin. However, as soon as she entered Yin Mengfan's office, she found that Yin Mengfan was on the phone. After hanging up the phone, she picked up the car key and was about to go out. Go to the internet. 7 K.O.M. Literature. Shenhui said with a smile, "Cousin, where are you going?" Yin Mengfan smiled and said, "I'm going out to find someone." "Are you so free during the summer vacation? Doesn't uncle care about you?" Shenhui curled her lips and snorted. "He can't even deal with his concubines. How can he have time to care about me?" Yin Mengfan raised her hand and made a gesture of wanting to hit her. She pretended to be angry and said, "A son doesn't talk about his father's fault. How can you talk about your father like that?" Shenhui was frightened by her gesture and jumped back. She made a face and said angrily, "That's right. Isn't the old master just a rich man? He brought so many women home and made himself look like a feudal landlord. Bah, it's disgusting. That's why I don't like him." Seeing that she couldn't control Shenhui, Yin Mengfan shook her head helplessly and sighed. "Alas, Uncle Shen is good at everything, but he's too romantic. I really don't know what his family will produce in 100 years. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but think of the descendants of the Shen family who were eyeing her uncle's property covetously. She sighed in her heart. Yin Mengfan was silent for a while. She suddenly thought of something and raised her head. "By the way, I'm going out now. You play here first. I'll be back later." Seeing that she was going out, Shenhui rolled her eyes and hugged her arm in a flattering manner. "Don't be like that, cousin. Take me with you. I'm bored." Yin Mengfan knew that Shenhui was the daughter of the Shen family and the apple of her uncle's eye. He loved her like a treasure, and no one could do anything to her. That was why she had developed a devil's character. If she didn't follow her temper, she was afraid that she would cause a ruckus here. Moreover, with her status, who could control her? Who would dare to? Yin Mengfan smiled helplessly and said, "I heard that your stepmother signed you up for piano, calligraphy, painting, and dance classes. There are so many classes, but you don't need to go to any of them. Why do you have to come here and behave so atrociously?" A look of contempt and disdain appeared on Shenhui's face. She sneered and said, "Her? She just wanted to gild her precious son's reputation, and conveniently bring me along to curry favor with the old man in the family. This woman had given birth to a beautiful son, and now her ass was so high up in the sky. She walked like a crab, as if she wanted to occupy the entire road by herself. Fortunately, the old master is still alive. Otherwise, humph, why would she bother with me? Don't joke around." At this point, Shenhui scolded with indignation and disgust. "Also, this woman has a hypocritical character, and her son is just like her. He looks well dressed in front of us, but who knows how many good women he has ruined behind our backs. The most hateful thing is that he actually set his sights on me. If this isn't a beast, then what is?" As she spoke, Shenhui's expression suddenly changed again. She looked at Yin Mengfan pitifully and said, "Cousin, you are the best to me in the family. You are really good to me. If you don't take me to play, then I really won't have anyone to play with me." Yin Mengfan pressed her forehead and was speechless. "Forget it, I'm really afraid of you. How could you say that about your stepmother and brother?" "I'm convinced." Yin Mengfan looked at Shenhui seriously and said, "Then no matter what you do, you have to listen to me. Don't talk nonsense, and don't act recklessly. Do you understand?" Shenhui cheered and nodded vigorously. She hugged Yin Mengfan and said with a smile, "Cousin, you're the best. By the way, what are you going to do? Why don't you reveal a little? Maybe I can help." Yin Mengfan smiled helplessly and said, As long as you don't help. I'm going to find Li Yundong. I'm going to watch the net." 7 K.O.M. When Shenhui heard this, she immediately jumped 3 feet high and said angrily, "Why are you looking for this pervert?" "Ah, I know. You must be very moved by his kung fu that day when he made Chow Kefi lose her virginity, right?" I didn't expect that, Yin Meng Fan. You're pretending to be pure and innocent. You're actually the same as other people behind our backs. Don't tell me that our Shen family only produces thieves and prostitutes." Yin Meng Fan was so angry that her face turned red. She raised her hand and slapped Shen Hui, leaving 5 finger marks on her face. "What nonsense are you talking about? I saw that he cured Chow Kefi's illness and felt that he was like a kung fu master. I wanted to invite him to treat my uncle. In 2 months, it will be my uncle's birthday. I want to find a master who can cure his chronic illness as a birthday present. How can you slander me like this?" As she spoke, Yin Meng Fan sat down and tears streamed down her face. Shen Hui covered her cheek and moved to Yin Meng Fan's side in embarrassment. She squatted down and pushed her leg timidly. "Cousin, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. You know that I'm a person with a quick mouth. I can't control it. You're a big person. Don't argue with a villain like me." As she said this, Shen Hui slapped herself a few times with an apologetic smile. "Look, I'll slap this stinky mouth to vent your anger for you." Yin Meng Fan also knew Shen Hui's temper. She wiped her tears, took out a wet tissue from the table, and handed it to Shen Hui. "Wipe your face and apply it. Does it hurt?" Shen Hui giggled and said, "I'm thick-skinned." "Cousin, you're not angry anymore." Yin Meng Fan shook her head helplessly. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with a tissue and said angrily, "You're so annoying. You made me angry as soon as you came here. My makeup is all ruined." Shen Hui shook Yin Meng Fan's arm and said coquettishly, "Cousin, you're a natural beauty. Don't be afraid." Yin Meng Fan stood up and said with a wry smile, "Forget it, I'm afraid of you. Let's go." It wasn't easy for me to find out Li Yundong's whereabouts from Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin is waiting for me at school. Don't let her wait too long. Go watch the net. Shen Hui pouted and said, "There are so many capable people in the world. Why do you have to look for him? I don't believe that he has any real talent." Yin Meng Fan quickly touched up her makeup and said, "Didn't you see it with your own eyes that day? Isn't it true?" Shen Hui tilted her head and snorted coldly. "He must be a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Or he colluded with that B*tch Chow Kefi." Yin Meng Fan was furious. "How can you talk about people like that? Then you don't have to go. Stay here, or go wherever you want." Shen Hui was shocked and quickly put on a pitiful look. "I know. I'll be good later, okay?" However, her eyes were rolling in her eyes, and she was secretly thinking about how to embarrass Li Yundong later. Yin Meng Fan had no time to guess what she was thinking. She took the car key and rushed to the underground parking lot with Shen Hui, then drove to Tiannan University. 20 minutes later, Yin Meng Fan parked an Audi A6 at the school gate. She lowered the window and saw that Zhou Qin was standing at the school gate with a book in her arms, talking to 2 girls. "Zhou Qin." Yin Meng Fan stuck her head out of the window and waved her hand. Zhou Qin followed the voice and looked over, then nodded at her. She turned her head and said something to the 2 girls beside her. Then the 3 girls walked over together. "President Yin." Zhou Qin approached and greeted her with a smile. Yin Meng Fan also got out of the car and looked at the 2 girls beside Zhou Qin curiously. Zhou Qin smiled faintly and said, "I went to Li Yundong's residence this morning, but he wasn't there. Later, I met these 2 senior sisters of mine. After chatting for a while, I found out that Li Yundong had moved out again. Well, let me introduce them. These 2 senior sisters are Feng Na and Ching Cheng. They know where Li Yundong lives now, and they happen to be looking for Li Yundong, so I think we might as well go together." Yin Meng Fan smiled and extended her hand to the 2 of them. She said in a reserved and polite manner, "Hello, I'm Yin Mengfan from Dongxing Real Estate. Nice to meet you. Feng Na and Ching Ching shook hands with Yin Mengfan and complimented each other politely. Zhou Qin said, then I'll go get my car. Feng Na, Ching Ching, will you take my car? Feng Na was about to speak when suddenly, the roar of a motor came from afar. The women looked over at the same time and saw a very flashy Lamborghini convertible sports car drive over and stop beside them. A beautiful woman wearing sunglasses looked at Yin Mengfan and Zhou Qin in surprise. President Yin? Zhou Qin? Why are you two here? Yin Mengfan laughed. President Chao, I should be the one asking you that, right? Why are you here? Chao Kefi smiled bitterly and said, don't mention it. A few days ago, this old man suddenly disappeared from my sight. I had been looking for him for 2 days. When I tried to call him, his phone was turned off. He is really mysterious. I came to school today to see if I can find him. Yin Mengfan smiled and said, President Chao, it's not easy to trouble you. What's so important? Chao Kefi smiled and smoothly changed the topic. If it wasn't important, would I be in such a hurry to find him? By the way, you're not looking for him, are you? Yin Mengfan didn't continue to ask. After all, people in this circle knew that the way to get to the bottom of things was the most annoying way to talk. She smiled and said, President Chao is really smart. We're going to find Li Yundong. Let's go together. Chao Kefi was overjoyed. That's really good timing. Great, let's go together. Then she smiled at Zhou Qin and said, Zhou Qin, I've never given you a ride before. Will you do me the honor today? Zhou Qin smiled and said, then I'll accept your invitation. Then she turned to Ching Cheng and Feng Na and said, then you two will take President Yin's car? Feng Na pursed her lips and smiled. No, I want to take the convertible. I've never sat in such a good car in my life. As she said that, she and Ching Cheng, who was beside her, giggled shamelessly. Although the words of the two people were snobbish, Chao Kefi and Yin Mengfan both felt that the two girls were simple-minded. They were much better than those hypocrites in society who didn't say anything but wanted to die in their hearts. Yin Mengfan smiled and shook her head. It seems that President Chao is smart. She would rather be under pressure to buy a good car. Now you're proud. Chao Kefi smiled and said, President Yin, you're rich. Don't tease a little girl like me. Let me go. Zhou Qin got into the front seat and fastened her seatbelt. She smiled and said, you two don't have to flatter each other. Let's go first. While speaking, Chao Kefi had already started the car. The power of the small sports car's motor was indeed different. As soon as they started, they left the Audi A6 several spaces behind them. After Feng Na told Chao Kefi the address, Chao Kefi said in disbelief, why is he staying in a hotel again? What's wrong with his family? Did he quarrel with Su Chan? No way, I think they're very loving. Zhou Qin supported her head with one hand and leaned her elbow against the car door, allowing the wind to mess up her hair. She sighed faintly and said, he is too mysterious. I can never see through him. But the more I can't see through him, the more I want to get closer to him to take a look. Hearing Zhou Qin's words, Chao Kefi, Feng Na, and Ching Cheng all fell silent. They all sighed in their hearts, yes, Zhou Qin is right. This boy seems to have a magical power, attracting them unconsciously to get close to him, understand him, and own him. Li Yundong, who are you? Why are you so mysterious, /om/? Chapter 143. Go to Watch Network. For a moment, the people in the car did not speak, silently thinking about their own things. About 10 minutes later, Chao Kefi drove to Li Yundong's temporary residence, followed by Yin Mengfan in her Audi. Watch Net. They got out of the car and walked into the hotel in a grandiose manner. The waiter in the hall was shocked when he saw them. Wow, good heavens. There are so many women, and all of them are top-grade beauties with different temperaments and postures. These days, the more beautiful a woman was, the more likely she was to be kept as a mistress, and the less likely she was to show her face outside. The probability of seeing a top-grade beauty on the street was really small. But suddenly seeing so many top-grade beauties walking together really shocked all the waiters and guests at the front desk of the hotel. They all looked at Zhou Qin and the others in a daze, their minds full of questions. What are these beauties doing here? Are they a group of big stars? Among this group of people, Yin Mengfan and Chao Kefi intentionally or unintentionally fell half a step behind Zhou Qin. Feng Na soon discovered this subtle thing, so she also pulled Ching Cheng and fell half a step behind Zhou Qin. This formed a situation where Zhou Qin was the leader of the group. Zhou Qin also seemed to be used to this kind of behavior. She walked to the front desk and asked, "Excuse me, is Li Yundong staying here?" The receptionist reacted as if she had just woken up from a dream. She was unconsciously shocked by Zhou Qin's temperament and aura. She subconsciously checked the computer, then nodded and said, "Yes, you are." Zhou Qin said, "We are his friends. May I ask which room he is staying in?" The receptionist said, "Room 2203. Zhou Qin nodded, and then the group walked toward room 2203 in a mighty manner. The receptionist saw that each of them had an extraordinary temperament, and two of them were even dressed like successful women. She did not dare to neglect them, so she quickly used the walkie-talkie to inform the nearby waiters and asked them to lead the way. When Zhou Qin arrived at the door of Li Yundong's room, she glanced at the sign on the door, frowned, and then knocked on the door. However, there was no response from inside. Behind her, Yin Mengfan and Chao Kefi looked at each other and said, "Is he not in?" Zhou Qin leaned against the door and listened for a while. She said decisively, "There's a sound inside. There should be someone inside." With that, she knocked hard on the door and shouted, "Li Yundong, it's me." But the door was still tightly shut, and no one opened it. Watch net. 7KOM. Net. Super_speed. More. Zhou Qin frowned. She dialed the cell phone she had given to Su Chan and found that there was also a ringtone coming from the room, but no one answered for a long time. Zhou Qin became more and more confused. She pondered for a while, then suddenly raised her head and shouted to the waiter, "Open the door." The waiter was shocked and said weakly, "I'm sorry, we have rules, we can't." Before he could finish his words, Zhou Qin glanced at him coldly and said, "If something happens to the people inside, can you bear the responsibility? Open the door." The waiter looked at the beautiful women with a face full of hesitation and grievance. He hesitated for a while, then took out his room card and unlocked the door. Zhou Qin couldn't wait to press the doorknob, open the door, and then push it open and enter. This room wasn't big to begin with, and with 6 lively beauties of all sizes pouring in, it immediately became unbearably crowded. As soon as they entered the room, they found that Li Yundong was sitting cross-legged on the bed, with his back facing them. Behind him stood Su Chan. Su Chan pressed one hand on Li Yundong's back and the other on his head. White qi was constantly rising from the top of Su Chan's head. This white qi condensed and did not dissipate, looking mysterious and strange. Whether it was Zhou Qin, Feng Na, Ching Cheng, Yin Mengfan, Chao Kefi, or Shen Hui, they had all more or less seen Li Yundong's extraordinary skills. They had all secretly guessed where Li Yundong's extraordinary kung fu came from. Today, they had seen Li Yundong with their own eyes. For a moment, they were curious and nervous. Unconsciously, their footsteps became much lighter, and they didn't dare to say a word. Zhou Qin and the others came to the front of Li Yundong. With just a little look, they immediately blushed. They saw that Li Yundong's expression was beautiful and happy, as if he had dreamed of something wonderful. A tent was set up high between his legs. Judging from the scale, the thing inside was obviously very huge and terrifying. Behind him, Su Chan also had a happy expression on her face. Her cheeks were flushed, her sinuses were closed, and there was a slight moan coming from her nose, which made people's imagination run wild. For a moment, the women in the room blushed and turned their heads, but they secretly looked at Li Yundong's body out of the corner of their eyes. Shen Hui sneered and secretly spat in her heart, this shameless couple. So many people came to find them, but they were hiding here and fooling around. However, when she saw that Li Yundong and Su Chan's posture really didn't look like that between a man and a woman, she couldn't help slapping Li Yundong on the shoulder and shouting, "Hey, are you still alive? So many people are looking for." Before Shen Hui could finish her sentence, her hands suddenly shook, and the Laogong acupoint in the palm of her hand was suddenly rushed open by the powerful Yuanyang qi in Li Yundong's body. A majestic and vigorous Yuanyang force rushed up along the Hanjian pericardium meridian in her hand. Shen Hui's whole body shook violently. This powerful impact was like a high-voltage electric current passing through her body, making her instantly lose the ability to move and speak. She froze in place as if she had been petrified, and her face was full of fear. She unconsciously opened her mouth, wanting to shout in fear, but she couldn't make a sound. Go to the internet. Yin Mengfan, who was standing to one side, was horrified. She subconsciously wanted to reach out and pull Shen Hui away, but Chao Kefi suddenly said in a low voice, "Don't move." Yin Mengfan suddenly withdrew her hand. She realized that if she reached out and touched Shen Hui, she would most likely fall into a dangerous situation like her. Yin Mengfan asked anxiously, "What's going on?" Although Chao Kefi had worked hard in society for so many years and had encountered many strange people and strange things, it was the first time she had seen something like this. With a strange expression on her face, she shook her head and said with a wry smile, "I don't know. I always feel that there is danger." Yin Mengfan was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. What should I do? If something happens to Shen Hui, how can I explain it to my uncle? Feng Na and Ching Cheng looked at each other. They wanted to help, but they didn't know how. Their feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, and they didn't move at all. Only Zhou Qin had been staring at Li Yundong. She suddenly said, "Let me try." Chao Kefi said, "Can this kind of cultivation be disturbed?" Zhou Qin's brows were tightly knitted together. She suddenly remembered the terrifying qi deviation that Li Yundong had experienced in the classroom last time. This time, there was no doubt in Zhou Qin's heart, Li Yundong must be practicing qigong. However, when she touched him last time, although Li Yundong had a great reaction, he had still woken up. She didn't know what would happen this time. Zhou Qin bit her lip and hesitated for a moment. She didn't know what would happen if she reached out her hand, but there seemed to be a voice telling her, "You should reach out and help him." Zhou Qin gritted her teeth fiercely and finally reached out her hand. She didn't know that this decision would completely change her future fate. As soon as Zhou Qin's hand touched Li Yundong's shoulder, she immediately felt a wave of heat spreading from her arm to her body. Then, the blood all over her body began to boil violently. This kind of burning pain immediately twisted her beautiful face. At this time, Li Yundong was like a volcano that was about to erupt at any time. The vigorous and majestic Yuanyang qi in his body had nowhere to vent. Although Su Chan was helping him release the qi, although Su Chan's cultivation was higher than Li Yundong's, the Yuan qi in his body was much stronger than Su Chan's. With Su Chan's physique, it was impossible for her to withstand the fierce attack of the Yuanyang qi. Therefore, she was also pulled into Li Yundong's illusion and followed him into qigong deviation. Fortunately, Shen Hui had slapped Su Chan rashly, which immediately helped Su Chan share a lot of the pressure. Moreover, Shen Hui herself was a virgin with a pure yin body, which could be called an excellent furnace. The pure yin qi in her body could best neutralize Li Yundong's Yuanyang qi. But although she had come to share the pressure, she still couldn't help Li Yundong get out of the danger. Moreover, Shen Hui was young and weak. Although she was a good furnace, her foundation was weak. She couldn't withstand the fierce attack of the Yuanyang flame. She couldn't hold on for more than 2 days like Su Chan could. At present, after a while, she was afraid that Li Yundong's Yuanyang Qi would collapse and she would completely become a vegetable with all her meridians destroyed. Fortunately, Zhou Qin was decisive enough. As soon as she stretched out her hand, the pressure was immediately divided from 3 people to 4 people. Moreover, she was one of the few virgins in the world, the demon of Xianin furnace. Even Su Chan, who had the extreme Yin body, had to praise her when she saw her. Moreover, Zhou Qin was already an adult. Her bones, flesh, meridians, and internal organs were enough to withstand the fierce attack of Yuanyang Qi. The pressure on Su Chan suddenly lightened. She was the one with the highest cultivation here. Now that the pressure was suddenly reduced, she immediately regained consciousness. As soon as she regained consciousness, she immediately poked Li Yundong's back, head, and other major acupoints with both hands. When the other women in the room saw that Su Chan had woken up, they were immediately surprised and delighted. Cheng Cheng was so happy that she wanted to clap her hands, but she was stopped by Feng Na, who made a gesture to keep quiet, for fear of disturbing Su Chan. All the major acupoints in Li Yundong's body were poked, and his acupoints were opened. For a moment, the Yuanyang genuine Qi in his body finally found a place to vent. Qi was the commander of blood. As soon as his breath calmed down, the boiling blood in his body also slowly calmed down. As soon as the blood in his body calmed down, the majestic thing on Li Yundong's waist also slowly softened. The expression on Li Yundong's face also slowly returned to normal. The extra Yuanyang Qi in his body excreted through all the acupoints in his body, causing the whole room to be filled with clouds and mist for a while, as if it was a fairyland. Feng Na, Qing Cheng, and Yin Meng Fan, the 3 virgins, smelled the supreme Yang Qi in the world. For a moment, the Yin and Yang Qi in their bodies intertwined. They couldn't help but feel their hearts beat faster and their cheeks flushed. Even they didn't understand why they were suddenly aroused. Chow Kefi was a mature woman who had experienced sexual intercourse, so she was naturally more aroused. She looked at Li Yundong with watery eyes, her legs unconsciously twisting, her sinuses closing, and her breathing slightly rapid. Women like them, who had only smelled this kind of aura, were already like this. Those like Zhou Qin and Shen Hui, who had been directly attacked by Li Yundong's Yuanyang Qi, were naturally even more unbearable. After a while, Li Yundong finally woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he found Zhou Qin standing in front of him. Her cheeks were red, and she was looking at him with seductive eyes. Her eyes were full of concern and shyness. Li Yundong was shocked. Zhou Qin. Why are you here? I remember I was with my girl. The following words were not suitable for children. Li Yundong stopped abruptly. He turned his head and saw that all the beauties he knew were in the room, from Feng Na and Qing Cheng to Yin Mengfan and Chow Kefi. Even Shen Hui, who was against him, was there. What made Li Yundong the most uneasy was that all the women in the room were looking at him with affection and shyness, as if he had done something to them. What's going on? Li Yundong didn't know what had happened before, so he asked in confusion. Li Yundong quickly turned around to look for Su Chan. When he looked back, he saw that Su Chan was looking at him with tears in her eyes, and then she threw herself into his arms. Seeing that Su Chan had suddenly cried so hard, Li Yundong couldn't help but become more and more flustered. His mind was in a mess as he remembered that in the illusion, he had only been fooling around with the little girl at first. Later, Shen Hui had suddenly appeared inexplicably, and then Zhou Qin had also appeared inexplicably. They had been fooling around together. When Li Yundong thought about it, he felt that he was simply shameless and dissolute. Seeing that the little girl was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, Li Yundong couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He thought to himself, oh no, did I do something that is intolerable and worse than a beast? Last week, he ranked 9th on the list of flowers. According to the rules, this week, there will be 3 nights, on Tuesday and Saturday. /om/ Chapter 144. Go to watch net. The great horror between reality and illusion was that it was difficult for people to tell what was real and what was fake. Go to watch net. Although Li Yundong had completely woken up now, he still couldn't tell whether what had happened in the illusion was real or not, especially when he found himself with two girls he didn't like in the illusion. When he opened his eyes, these two girls were right in front of him. How could this not make Li Yundong feel uneasy? Li Yundong's eyes were blank for a long time before he came to his senses. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, looked up at Zhou Qin and the others in the room, and smiled dryly. Then he lowered his head, patted the girl on the shoulder, and asked tentatively, "Hey, what are you crying for?" There was no reason for the girl not to cry. Cultivators only had two chances to reach the Zhuji phase in their lives. The first one, which was supposed to be a sure success, had almost caused both of them to die. If it hadn't been for the coincidence of Zhou Qin and the others, the two of them would have had to go to the bridge of helplessness. Thinking about it now, the girl was especially scared. She hated herself for not being thoughtful, but she was also afraid that what if Li Yundong failed to reach the Zhuji phase the next time? What would she do then? Su Chan put her arms around Li Yundong's waist and cried loudly. There was an indescribable sadness in her cry. Li Yundong had ulterior motives in his heart. Listening to the cry, he naturally felt more and more uncomfortable. He felt that the girl seemed to have suffered some great grievance, and his heart became more and more afraid. Did I really do something wrong to Su Chan? No way. I'm not such a beast, am I? Thinking of this, Shenhui, who had been standing in the same place with a dull expression, suddenly blushed and stamped her feet. She scolded in a low voice, "Beast." Then her tears fell, and she turned around and rushed out. Damn it. This expression, this tone, isn't it the appearance of those chaste women in old movies after they have been insulted? Li Yundong's mind buzzed. No way, did I really do something beastly? Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? Would this girl rush in with a pair of scissors and yell, "I'm going to cut you," or something like that? Li Yundong waited for a long time in a daze. Fortunately, he didn't see Shenhui rush back. Yin Mengfan saw Shenhui rush out as if she had suffered some great grievance. For a moment, she didn't know whether she should chase after her or stay. Chao Kefi, who was beside her, pushed her and whispered, "Hurry up and catch up with her. Shenhui has a childish temper. Don't let anything happen to her. If there's anything here, we can talk about it another day." Watch net. Hanjiom. Only then did Yin Mengfan sigh in her heart. She said goodbye to Li Yundong and hurriedly chased after him. Li Yundong's mind was in a mess. How could he be in the mood to care about Yin Mengfan and Shenhui? He hesitated for a long time and finally went all out. If he wanted to kill them, he could just say it. What was the point of crying? Li Yundong lowered his head and patted Su Chan on the shoulder again. He said softly, "Hey, don't cry. If you have something to say, tell me. My heart is in a mess from crying. What's wrong with me?" Only then did Su Chan raise her hazy, tearful eyes. She leaned over to Li Yundong's ear and sobbed in a low voice, "The Zhuji phase failed." Li Yundong was shocked. He asked in a low voice, puzzled, "But didn't you tell me that you succeeded?" Su Chan whimpered, that was your inner demon fantasy." Li Yundong immediately let out a long sigh of relief and patted his chest with a rare look of relief on his face. "Fortunately, my reputation has been preserved. Those beasts turned out to be things in the illusion. That means it's not real. How lucky." Seeing that Li Yundong didn't look sad, Su Chan couldn't help but be surprised. "You're not sad?" "Not sad at all." Li Yundong smiled and said, "What's there to be sad about?" As he said this, he muttered in his heart, "If I do something wrong to you and you ignore me in a fit of anger, I will be sad." Seeing Li Yundong's reaction, Su Chan thought that he was broad-minded, so she couldn't help but cry again. "It's all my fault. I made your 6 senses unclean, and your desires are not yet dead. Six senses unclean. Not yet dead. There's gossip. At this time, Thong Na, Ching Cheng, and Chow Kefi, the women who hadn't left yet, suddenly pricked up their ears, showing expressions of interest. Li Yundong also felt that these words were very ambiguous. He coughed dryly and comforted Su Chan in turn. It's okay. Don't you still have one more chance? You can come again in the future. You have to know that the sage has a saying, failure is the mother of success. When Su Chan heard this, she couldn't help but burst into laughter. She said angrily, "You're so annoying." When did the sage say that? Li Yundong smiled and said, "There are many things that sage Confucius said that you haven't heard of. You're so ignorant." Su Chan was amused by Li Yundong, and the distress in her heart gradually disappeared. She wiped away her tears and said with a smile, "What did sage Confucius say that I didn't say? Tell me." "I've read the Analects of Confucius since I was a child, and I've long memorized it. How could I not know?" Li Yundong laughed and didn't answer the little girl's words. He turned his head and greeted Zhou Qin and the others with a smile. "Why are you here?" Zhou Qin was still recalling what had happened in the illusion. For a moment, her cheeks were so red that it seemed as if blood was about to drip out. She was suddenly awakened by Li Yundong's shout and said incoherently, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Go to the internet. Rainbow ** literature _school % super #fast. Update. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Thong Na interrupted and said, "Li Yundong, the thing is, Mr. Yin called Zhou Qin to ask for your address. Zhou Qin went to your place to look for you, but you weren't there. Coincidentally, she met me again and asked about your whereabouts. I told her that you were here, so we came to find you." Only then did Li Yundong and Su Chan understand. Su Chan thought to herself, "Fortunately, they came. Otherwise, we would really be dead this time. My master is right. Cultivation is really the most terrifying thing in the world. It's like walking on thin ice. If you're not careful, you'll be doomed eternally." The more Su Chan thought about it, the more afraid she became. She saw that Li Yundong didn't know that she had just escaped from the gates of hell, so she didn't want to tell him about it, lest he had a lingering fear, which would affect his next Juji phase. Li Yundong said with a smile, "So that's how it is. I was just wondering why there were so many beautiful women around me when I opened my eyes. I was so scared that I thought I was still dreaming." At the mention of dreams, Zhou Qin couldn't help blushing again. Although the time she had been in contact with Li Yundong seemed to not be long, in fact, the time that had passed in the illusion had been as long as a few days. What had happened in it was ambiguous and romantic, which was really not enough for outsiders to know. With her shrewdness and self-control, as long as she thought about it a little, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Li Yundong was used to seeing Zhou Qin's cold side. At this time, when he saw her blushing, shy, and beautiful appearance, his heart suddenly moved. He didn't dare to look at her anymore. He turned his head to look at Chow Kefi and said with a smile, "Mr. Chow, why are you here?" Chow Kefi said with a wry smile, "Young Master Li, you finally remember me. Last time you made such a big trouble at the Xingyuan Hotel, it made me suffer. You left a mess, and it took me a long time to clean it up." When Li Yundong remembered that he and Lin Youfa had fought at the Xingyuan Hotel last time, he couldn't help but laugh awkwardly. "Really? I'm really sorry. At that time, I actually wanted to explain it clearly, but I didn't have the chance." After that, Li Yundong suddenly thought of something and asked timidly, "You won't ask me to compensate you, will you? Let me say this first. I don't have money, but I have my life." Chow Kefi laughed. "You make me sound like a landlord in the old society. I came to you for something else. There's money to be made." As soon as Li Yundong heard that there was money to be made, he immediately smiled. "Money to be made? That's good. What is it?" Suddenly, his expression changed and he said seriously, "If you want me to protect those boring, low-level guys I met last time, don't mention it. I'm afraid I'll beat them until they can't take care of themselves." Chow Kefi smiled. "No, I can't find a suitable male companion for a party. After thinking about it, I came to you." As she said this, Chow Kefi turned to look at Su Chan. "Su Chan, it's okay if I borrow your boyfriend for one night, right?" Su Chan blinked her eyes and said innocently, "Okay." Feng Na pulled Xing Cheng's arm out of the room. "Oh no," she said in a low voice. "Su Chan isn't scheming at all, but Chow Kefi is. I'm afraid that Li Yundong won't be able to withstand the double attack of Chow Kefi's money and flesh bombs." "Oh no," Ching Ching said. "I think Su Chan looks stupid," Ching Ching said in a low voice, "but in fact, she's not stupid at all. And even if she really is stupid, that's because luck favors fools. I don't believe that Li Yundong will give up on Su Chan and choose Chow Kefi. What if this guy takes both the big and the small?" Feng Na asked suddenly. Ching Ching was stunned. "No way. He doesn't look like that kind of person." "What if he does?" Feng Na asked. Ching Ching and Feng Na looked at each other, and they both realized that if Li Yundong was really that kind of person, it meant that he could accept Chow Kefi and everyone else, including the two girls who had a crush on Li Yundong. Ching Ching and Feng Na looked at each other. But if Li Yundong really did that, then was he still worthy of their love? This was simply a devil's proposition. Feng Na and Ching Ching were at a loss for a moment. They originally wanted to warn Su Chan, but they couldn't help but take a wait-and-see attitude. In their hearts, they hoped that Li Yundong could resist this temptation, but at the same time, they hoped that he couldn't resist it. Human beings were the most complicated animals in the world, especially women. Li Yundong didn't notice Feng Na and Ching Cheng's whispering at all. He smiled and said to Chow Kefi, "Going to the banquet? What about the reward last time?" Chow Kefi laughed and said, "How dare you mention it last time? You made me pay so much money, and you still have the nerve to ask for a reward?" Li Yundong laughed dryly and didn't dare to mention this matter again. He turned his head to look at Zhou Qin and said with a smile, "Zhou Qin, I have to thank you for finding me a good job. This master is too difficult to serve. He's ordering me around like a permanent worker." This was originally a joke, but when Zhou Qin heard it, she felt that it stung her. She couldn't bear to see Li Yundong and Su Chan being intimate, nor could she bear to see Li Yundong and Chow Kefi laughing and talking happily. She only felt sad in her heart and suddenly flared up. "So I was wrong to help you?" After that, she turned and walked away. Li Yundong was stunned. He hadn't expected that Zhou Qin would be angry because of this. Su Chan reacted quickly. She grabbed Zhou Qin and said sincerely, "Zhou Qin, thank you so much for today." Zhou Qin grew up in a rich and powerful family. She was a girl who was extremely good at controlling her emotions. She had been too immersed in the illusion and suddenly returned to reality. The huge contrast made her a little out of control. After being pulled by Su Chan, she immediately stabilized and stood still. She forced a smile and said, "Why are you thanking me?" Su Chan thought to herself, "If it weren't for you, Li Yundong and I would have been dead." But these words couldn't be said directly, so Su Chan smiled and said, "Anyway, thank you." After that, Su Chan turned her head and made a face at Li Yundong. She changed the topic and said, "You haven't told me what Confucius said just now. Don't even think about running away." Li Yundong's stomach happened to be growling like a drum. He took the opportunity to get off the stage and said with a smile, "Confucius said, if you don't sleep at noon, you will collapse in the afternoon. If you don't eat a meal, you will starve into a mummy." Su Chan said angrily, "When did Confucius say such a thing? You're talking nonsense." Li Yundong's face was serious, and he said seriously, "Who said that?" "I have the famous words of second sage Mencius as a witness to prove that this sentence is correct." Li Yundong's serious look made Zhou Qin, who was resentful in her heart, couldn't help but be curious. What did Mencius say? Li Yundong waved his hand and said, Confucius said, if you don't sleep at noon, you will collapse in the afternoon. If you don't eat a meal, you will starve into a mummy. Mencius said, Confucius is right. After this, Su Chan, Feng Na, Ching Cheng, and Zhou Qin couldn't help laughing, /om/. Chapter 145. Go to watch net. Love was the most unreasonable thing in the world. Although Li Yundong had failed to reach the Zhuji phase, he didn't feel sad or regretful at all. Instead, he was joking around with others. If it had been other cultivators, they would have been severely criticized for having a rough character and not making progress. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. However, Su Chan felt that Li Yundong was easygoing, generous, and cheerful. He was the best cultivator in the world. As soon as Li Yundong made a joke, the panic and fear in Su Chan's heart caused by Li Yundong's failure to reach the Zhuji phase disappeared, replaced by a strong attachment and admiration for this boy. Su Chan touched her stomach and pouted. It's okay if you don't say it. I'm hungry now. Feng Na smiled and said, then let's go eat. It's time for lunch. Chow Kefi smiled and said, then let's go eat. It's time for lunch. Li Yundong clapped his hands and said, great, finally someone is taking care of the food. Girl, eat to your heart's content later. Chow Kefi only knew that Li Yundong had an amazing capacity for alcohol, but she didn't know that Su Chan could eat. She smiled and said, eat as much as you want. One meal won't make me poor. After she finished speaking, Li Yundong, Su Chan, and Zhou Qin suddenly thought of Lu Chuan. The three of them couldn't help but look at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. Zhou Qin pursed her lips and smiled. President Chow, one meal can make a person poor. Last time, someone paid for us. It was 6 figures. Chow Kefi was so scared that she gasped. Don't scare me. I can't compare to a rich and powerful family like Zhou Qin. Li Yundong smiled and said, don't worry, President Chow. If it's really not enough, I'll let Zhou Qin pay the bill. After that, he winked at Zhou Qin. Although these words hurt people's wallets, Zhou Qin liked to hear them. For no reason, she felt happy in her heart, and the smile on her face grew wider. They talked and laughed as they walked out of the hotel. Except for Li Yundong, who was a big man, the rest of the group were beautiful women. As soon as they stood on the street, they immediately attracted countless eyes. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. Let's go, let's go. Feng Na had goosebumps all over her body as she couldn't help but urge them. Chow Kefi walked up to the car, plugged in the key, and started the car. Mr. Yin drove away, she said with a smile. So we'll have to squeeze together. Li Yundong, why don't you hold Su Chan and sit in the front, and the 3 beauties can sit in the back? Li Yundong smiled and was about to answer when he suddenly heard a loud roar from the street. F***CK, stop right there. Following that, a series of shouts rang out, stop, don't run. Li Yundong was still trying to figure out what was going on when he suddenly saw a person running across the road. He just so happened to know this person. It was none other than Lu, the one who had clashed with him several times before. Su Chan also saw it clearly. She pulled Li Yundong's sleeve and said, hey, Yundong, isn't this the one I kicked last time? Why are so many people chasing after him? While they were talking, Lu had already run out of their line of sight. 7 or 8 gangsters with iron rods in their hands were hot on his heels. Stop right there. You can run away, but you can't run away from the temple, the gangsters shouted fiercely. Pay me back now, or I'll kill you. Li Yundong recalled how Lu had tried to threaten Su Chan last time. His anger flared up again. He sneered. Humph. This is what they call, those who commit too much evil will bring about their own destruction. Serves you right. Karma. What's wrong? Chow Kefi asked curiously. Did something happen between you two? Fong Na told her what had happened from beginning to end. Chow Kefi couldn't help but sneer and scold, you deserve it. You could have taken the right path, but you chose to take the crooked path. Karma will come to him sooner or later. As she spoke, Lu suddenly tripped and fell to the ground, as if to prove her words were true. Perhaps Lu had run too fast, but when he turned around to look at his pursuers, he tripped and fell to the ground with a thud. His pursuers immediately caught up to him and surrounded him tightly. They punched and kicked him while cursing, F***ck. Why aren't you paying me back? F***ck. If you don't pay me back, I'll cripple you. Lu curled his body into a ball to protect his chest and head. He was howling in pain from the beatings. Go to CNET. 7KOM. Net. Super_speed. Faster. New. At first, Li Yundong thought it was a great way to vent his anger. But after a while, a middle-aged woman ran towards him, wailing loudly. Stop. Stop. You're going to kill me. Oh, my son. What have you done to deserve this? Hey, isn't that? Su Chan recognized the middle-aged woman immediately. It was the woman who had gotten into a fight with Li Yundong at the market. Li Yundong frowned, but said nothing. The middle-aged woman didn't care about the menacing iron rods in the hoodlum's hands. She rushed forward and threw herself on top of Lu to protect her son. She was like an old mother hen protecting her chick. She spread out her wings to protect her son from any harm. The leader of the group was a bald, green-skinned gangster. He pointed an iron rod at Lu's mother and yelled, "Get the F***ck out of my way, you old bastard. Your son owes money and he doesn't want to pay it back. Are you going to pay it for him?" The middle-aged woman's tears and snot streamed down her face. Son, what kind of money do you owe this time? I told you not to gamble. Why won't you listen to me? There's no way this family can take this kind of loss. Ever since Lu had been taught a harsh lesson by Su Chan at the school gates, he had been teased by others on the streets for being beaten up by a delicate little girl. He was a little disheartened, so he abandoned himself to despair and started gambling in the casino every day. But the casino was a ruthless place. 9 out of 10 gamblers lost. In just a few days, he was in a lot of debt. At first, he could still ask for money from his family, but his mother found out and stopped giving him money. So Lu started stealing things from the house and selling them. But now that everything was gone, he was being chased and beaten up on the streets. Lu looked at his mother with a face full of shame. He stammered, "I couldn't help it, could I? Mom, if you pay me back, I swear I'll never gamble again." Lu's mother wailed. "You've sold all the valuable things in the house. There's only a few plots of land left in the countryside that you can't sell. What else have you not sold? Tell me, do you still want to sell our family's lifeblood?" The hoodlum snorted coldly. "Oh, you still have a few plots of land in the house? Fine, this kid owes us 180,000 yuan. Let's sell your land as collateral. F***ck, go back and get the real estate certificate." These plots of land were Lu's family jewels. How could Lu's mother be willing to give them away? She was so agitated that she shouted, "Oh my God, what kind of world is this? You want to seize my land in broad daylight? Not only do you force me to gamble, but now you want to force me to die. You're so cruel, I'm going to kill you." After saying that, she rushed toward the gangster with the green skin. The green-skinned thug was furious. He kicked Lu's mother and sent her tumbling backward. He pointed a finger at her nose and cursed, "You shameless B***tch. A life for a life, and a debt must be repaid. This is the law of the land. Besides, there's no such thing as forcing someone to gamble. Your son was the one who wanted to gamble, so you're blaming me." Lu's eyes turned bloodshot when he saw his mother being beaten. He charged at the hoodlum like an enraged beast. "How dare you hit my mother? I'll beat you to death." The hoodlum was caught off guard and fell to the ground. In his panic, he took a flurry of punches. The hoodlums around him immediately surrounded him. A flurry of sticks hit Lu, and he fell to the ground in a few hits. Lu rolled on the ground in pain and squealed like a pig being slaughtered. His mother felt like a knife was being twisted in her heart. She cried out to the passers-by, "Help! Help!" However, the passers-by either stopped to watch, pointed, or sneered. Not a single person stepped in to help. Not even one person dialed 110. The fickleness of the world and the fickleness of human nature were on full display. Su Chan couldn't bear to watch it and said in a low voice, "Yundong, it seems that he still has some intention to protect his mother. He finally has a Buddhist heart. Help him, right?" Li Yundong was filled with righteous indignation. Even though he was angry at the mother and son. One was greedy and snobbish, and the other was rude and unreasonable. He was even angrier at the fact that these hoodlums were bullying the old and the weak. "Stop it." Li Yundong couldn't take it anymore. He leaped from one side of the road to the other. The hoodlum pointed his iron rod at Li Yundong's nose when he saw that Li Yundong was meddling in his business. F***ck. He yelled. "Where did this punk come from? I'm working here. Get the hell out of here." Li Yundong flew into a thunderous rage and snatched the iron rod from the gangster's hand. With a loud shout and a thunderous roar, he exerted strength in his arms. The muscles on his arms swelled up like steel bars, and he forcefully twisted the 1-foot-long iron rod into a circular iron ring. F***ck me. Is he even human? The eyes of these hoodlums almost popped out of their sockets. Their faces were ashen and their legs were trembling. After Li Yundong twisted the iron rod into an iron ring, he snorted angrily and slammed the iron ring into the ground. There was a muffled thud, and the ground seemed to tremble. The iron ring smashed into the ground and created a small pit. Half of the iron ring was embedded in it. "Say what you just said again if you have the guts." Li Yundong glared at the hoodlum fiercely. These hoodlums had never seen such a ruthless person before. They were so scared that they didn't dare to make another move. The leader of the hoodlums was also shocked by Li Yundong's terrifying strength and took 3 steps back. He shouted fiercely, What do you want to do? Do you know who's behind me?" Li Yundong snorted angrily. "Even if you have the king behind you, you can't bully the old and the weak in public like this." The hoodlum shouted, "Behind me is he Shao of Tiannan. Who in the underworld doesn't know his name? If you dare to touch a hair of mine, I guarantee that you won't be able to survive in Tiannan City for a day." As soon as he heard the name He Shao, Li Yundong became even angrier. He laughed angrily and said, "He Shao. Very good, very good. I happen to have some grudges with him. I won't have any psychological burden when I deal with you later." As he said this, he clenched his fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. He stepped forward and was about to fight, /om/. Chapter 146. Go to watch net. Zhou Qin pulled him aside and said in a low voice, "Your fist is heavy. Don't kill anyone. I'll take care of this. Go to watch net." After that, she took a step forward and glanced at the gangsters indifferently. "Do you only know young Master He? Do you know who I am?" Zhou Qin was so low-key at school that the people around her didn't know her background. How could these gangsters know? They looked at each other and shook their heads. Although some people saw that Zhou Qin was beautiful and wanted to tease her, when they saw the cold and arrogant expression on Zhou Qin's face, they swallowed their words for a moment. In the underworld, it was not about whose hands were the best, but whose eyes were more vicious. The gangsters saw that Zhou Qin had a unique temperament that only people who had been in a high position for a long time had. He was shocked and couldn't help but lower his stance. "You are?" Zhou Qin sneered and said, call young Master He now and tell him that I, Zhou Qin, am in charge of this matter." The gangster picked up the phone doubtfully. After finally dialing, he told her what had happened here in a low voice. Then, he glanced at Zhou Qin and said Zhou Qin's name. However, after he finished speaking, there was no movement on the phone for a long time. Only heavy breathing could be heard. The gangster couldn't help but be a little puzzled. He couldn't help asking, "Big brother, what do you think?" Zhou Qin suddenly shouted, "Young Master He, aren't you afraid of getting into trouble by hanging out with these people from the underworld? I advise you to stop as soon as possible, lest you bring about your own destruction." This fierce shout could be heard clearly through the phone. The green-skinned gangster quickly heard a gnashing voice coming from the phone, "Do as she says." The green-skinned gangster looked at Zhou Qin with both respect and fear, then at Li Yundong. Then, he spat at Lu and his mother. "Count yourselves lucky. Next time, don't fall into my hands again." The green-skinned gangster scolded Li Yundong and his mother. When Li Yundong saw that he was still trying to intimidate him before he left, he suddenly flew into a rage, and evil rose in his heart. Li Yundong was so angry that his hair stood on end, and the blood vessels on his neck bulged. A stream of blood qi rushed to the top of his head, and the majestic qi instantly gathered from his chest to his throat. After being squeezed, he let out a terrifying roar, "Get lost." In the past, Zhang Fei's roar had scared a general of Cao Cao to death. Li Yundong's roar was really as powerful as Zhang Yida's roar back then. Watch net. The passers-by on both sides felt as if there was a sudden clap of thunder in their ears. They felt as if their internal organs had been dug out by someone. They felt as if their guts were being torn apart, their hearts and lungs were shaking, and their brains were buzzing. As for the gangster who bore the brunt of Li Yundong's attack, he was so frightened that his gallbladder nearly ruptured, and his legs went limp. If he had been riding on a tall horse, he would have fallen off on the spot, broken his neck, and died. The gangster felt dizzy, and his ears were buzzing. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't exert any strength in his legs. His body went limp, and he was about to fall to the ground. Although the gangsters on the side were all scared out of their wits by Li Yundong's roar, they were not the main targets of the attack, so they were still able to hold on. One by one, they supported the gangster who led them and fled in panic. When Li Yundong saw them go far away, the anger in his heart gradually dissipated. He turned his head and saw Su Chan massaging Chao Kefi's chest. Feng Na and Qing Sheng were both rubbing their temples and pressing their chests, and their faces were full of pain. Only Zhou Qin was in high spirits, as if she hadn't been hurt in the slightest. Li Yundong was stunned, as if he couldn't understand why these women were acting as if nothing had happened to Zhou Qin. But he didn't have time to think too much about it. He turned to Feng Na and the others with an apologetic look on his face. "I'm sorry," he said. Feng Na gave Li Yundong a bitter smile and gave him a thumbs up. "Li Yundong, I really have to hand it to you today. I've seen you in so many fights, and you were the most impressive one today." Qing Qing laughed and rubbed her chest. "Yeah," she said. "Zhang Fei was just like that back at Changban Bridge. At least let me know if you're going to yell at me. You almost scared the life out of me." Chao Kefi's heart was already in a bad condition. After being scared by Li Yundong, she almost fell ill again. Fortunately, Su Chan was quick to help her stop the disease. She gasped for a while and forced a smile. "Oh my, you're amazing. Today, I finally know what it means to be majestic and like a god." That loud roar almost took my life. That was close, that was close. Just as he was about to say something, Lu's mother suddenly pulled him over. As soon as the two of them arrived, Lu's mother pulled Lu to his knees and kowtowed 3 times to the ground. Lu's mother pulled Lu to his knees and kowtowed 3 times. Li Yundong hurriedly reached out to help them up. Hey, what are you doing?" Lu's mother's face was covered in tears. She slapped herself hard on the face and wailed, "I was blind. I stole $100 from my benefactor. Who would have thought that my benefactor would repay me with kindness? You saved my good-for-nothing son and me. I don't have anything to repay you with, so I'll just kowtow to you a few times. Then, she bent down and kowtowed again. Go to CNET. 7 KOM. Rainbow ** literature _learning % super # speed update. New Li Yundong quickly helped her up and sighed. Auntie, let's not talk about what happened back then. You and your son should go home now. Just teach your son well from now on. Li Yundong turned his head to look at Lu and scolded him. Tell me, is there a son in this world who acts like this? Not only did he not know how to be filial to his mother, but he also caused her to get beaten up in public. A man must have a Buddhist heart. Without it, what difference is there between him and a beast? If it wasn't for your mother, I wouldn't have saved you today. Look at how you were beaten up just now. Your mother would rather they beat her than let these people hurt you. As a 7-foot man, aren't you ashamed? Get up and be filial to your mother. Lu was already feeling guilty, but after hearing Li Yundong's words, he immediately hugged his mother and wailed. Mom, I won't gamble anymore. Lu's mother couldn't help but cry as well. She patted her son's back and said, Good, good. Live a good life from now on. The mother and son hugged each other and cried bitterly. Li Yundong's heart ached when he saw how heartbroken they were, so he said, all right. Stop crying and go home. It's not good to stay here. Besides, you should be thanking her. Li Yundong pulled Zhou Qin to his side. Lu's mother kowtowed to Zhou Qin again. This young lady is so beautiful and kind-hearted. She must be the reincarnation of the merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva. I see that you and this benefactor are a perfect match. I hope that you two will have many children and live a life of prosperity. Li Yundong couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Zhou Qin's face turned red, and Su Chan's heart was filled with jealousy. Lu's mother thanked Li Yundong again, then pulled him up to his feet. Good people, she muttered. There are still good people in this world. Good people will be rewarded. Then, she pulled her son further and further away. The two of them had walked a dozen meters away when Lu suddenly broke free of his mother's hand and ran to Li Yundong. He knelt down with a thud and kowtowed 3 times. His forehead started to bleed. Lu, ate shit and lost my mind. I can't believe that I went against a good person like you. From now on, I will turn over a new leaf. Big brother, if you need anything, just tell me. I don't care if I have to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire. If I, Lu, ever frown, I'm not a man. After he finished speaking, he fiercely clenched his teeth and forcefully broke his little finger with a crack. Zhou Qin and the others were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They let out a cry. Li Yundong was also startled. He stepped forward to check on his mother's injury, but Lu stubbornly jumped up and chased after his mother. When Li Yundong and the others saw the mother and son leave, he sighed and said, something happened out of nowhere. I'm so angry that I'm full. Feng Na rubbed her chest for a while and slowly calmed down. She smiled and said, that won't do. You're full, but we're still hungry. Ching Ching added, yes, especially after you scared me just now. I'm even hungrier. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of logic is that? Su Chan covered her stomach and said coquettishly, Confucius said, if you don't sleep at noon, you'll collapse in the afternoon. If you don't eat a meal, you'll starve to death. Yundong, I'm going to starve to death. Li Yundong laughed. Mencius said, Confucius is right. Let's go eat. All the girls burst into laughter. In a guest room of the Xingyuan Hotel, after young master he hung up his phone, he angrily threw it on the ground. Although the ground was covered with a thick carpet, the phone was still broken into pieces. The phone rolled over and landed at the feet of a pair of milky white high heels. The owner of this pair of feet bent down and picked up the phone. Her low-collared chest revealed a deep ravine, which made young Master He's eyes filled with evil thoughts for a moment. This woman was Ding Nan. She threw young Master He's phone on the bed and said leisurely, "Why are you so angry, young Master He? If you don't welcome me, I'll leave now. Anyway, I haven't even sat here for a long time." Young Master He stared at Ding Nan like a wolf. He suddenly grinned like a crocodile opening its bloody mouth. He smiled hypocritically and said, "Look at what you're saying. We've known each other for a long time. Tell me, why are you looking for me?" As he spoke, young Master He sat down on his seat, crossed his legs, lit a cigarette, and blew out a smoke ring. Ding Nan smiled and asked, "You were angry about Zhou Qin just now, weren't you?" When young Master He heard Zhou Qin's name, the expression on his face immediately became fierce and ferocious. "This B*TCH is going against me everywhere. I'll teach her a lesson sooner or later. F*CK. I have a way to help you deal with her. Are you willing to listen?" Ding Nan smiled like a demonic poppy flower. Young Master He looked at her in confusion. "What can you do?" Ding Nan walked up to young Master He, bent down, and whispered in his ear for a while. At first, young Master He's gaze was still greedily staring at the ravine on Ding Nan's chest, but after a while, his gaze became sinister and shocked. After Ding Nan finished speaking, young Master He raised his head and looked at Ding Nan. After staring at her for a while, he slowly said, "The sting at the back of a wasp's tail is the most poisonous. A woman's heart is the most poisonous." This sentence is indeed not wrong at all. Ding Nan straightened up and smiled. "Thank you for your praise. If I'm not ruthless, how can I beat her? Moreover, aren't you the ultimate beneficiary? Do it or not? As a man, you should make your decision." Young Master He laughed out loud. "Of course, why not? I just want to teach this B*TCH a lesson so that she won't look down on me all day long." As he spoke, he smiled evilly and reached out to pull Ding Nan's arm. "I really didn't expect you to have such means and brains. How about coming over and fighting me? I won't treat you badly." Ding Nan quietly dodged young Master He's claws. She twisted her waist and walked gracefully to the door. Then, she looked back and smiled. "Thank you for your concern, young Master He. I think it's better for me to keep a distance from you now. Otherwise, Zhou Qin will definitely suspect me." After saying that, she opened the door and gestured to young Master He seductively. "Bye-bye." Then, she closed the door and left. Young Master He stared at her back as she disappeared into the door. The smile on his face disappeared bit by bit, and his eyes were filled with a strange light. He snorted coldly. "Vicious woman." Young Master He's gaze was fixed on one place, like a cold poisonous snake that was about to devour someone at any time. He sat there for nearly an hour before he took out another phone from his pocket and dialed a number. "Hello, is this Zhou Qin?" "It's me. I have something to tell you. /OM/ Chapter 147. Go to CNET. Li Yundong and the others filled the Lamborghini to the brim. Because it was a small sports car, they had to climb to the back seat in the convertible state, and they also had to put down the front seat. For a moment, the car was full of people. Except for Li Yundong, who was a big man, the others were all beautiful women, which made the passers-by very envious. Go to CNET. Although Zhou Qin, Feng Na, and Xing Cheng were all very slim in the back seat, the small sports car was not good at carrying so many people. Zhou Qin smiled bitterly at Chao Kefi and said, "President Chao, you'd better take me to school. I'll go get the car. I can't stand it." Feng Na also agreed, "Let's eat near the school." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Then let's go to the cafeteria." Chao Kefi laughed and let go of the steering wheel. She clapped her hands and said, "Good, good. I haven't eaten in the cafeteria for a long time. Let's go and miss it." The people in the car were so scared that they shouted, "Drive carefully." Chow Kefi quickly grabbed the steering wheel and smiled embarrassedly. "I was too excited. I'm sorry. I've been away from school for too long. I missed the feeling of school." Li Yundong teased, "You think that eating in the cafeteria will save money?" Chow Kefi said angrily, "Li Yundong, you're wronging me. Do you know how much effort and money I spent to clean up the mess you caused at the Xingyuan Hotel?" Li Yundong hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "President Chow is beautiful and broad-minded. I'm sure you won't care about a commoner like me." "A commoner?" Chow Kefi's expression suddenly became very strange. In her opinion, Li Yundong must be a hidden master. Otherwise, his skills could not be so terrifying. In any case, there was no way he could be such a commoner. "If you are a commoner, then aren't we all commoners?" Chow Kefi said with a smile. Zhou Qin added, "Li Yundong, you are at best an unruly person who causes trouble all day long." Li Yundong didn't refute her. He chuckled, hugged Su Chan, and said, "Look, they're all bullying me. Aren't you going to stand up and uphold justice?" Su Chan straightened up in Li Yundong's arms, waved her small fists, and shouted with righteous indignation, "You can't bully Yundong. Only I can bully him." Su Chan's naivety and cuteness made the women in the car burst into laughter. "Watch net." Li Yundong also laughed and pinched the girl's cheek. The group of people chatted and laughed as they arrived at the school. It was noon, and the afternoon exams had not yet begun. Many students were eating in the cafeteria with books in their arms. Li Yundong couldn't help but feel ashamed of their diligence. "By the way, why didn't you take the exam?" Li Yundong suddenly thought of something and asked. Ching Ching chimed in, "It's all because they were looking for you. They handed in their papers early." Li Yundong said with a sigh, "Alas, this is really unbearable. In fact, I really want to take the exam like you." Zhou Qin smiled and shook her head. Li Yundong, you are really too much. Not only do you not need to take the exam, but you also said such words to annoy us. Look at how hard others study, and look at you. You skipped dozens of classes in a semester, and yet you still passed all of them in advance. It's really unreasonable." Li Yundong made an obeisance by cupping his hands and said, "You flatter me. But in my opinion, in fact, in college, I have concluded that the more you study, the more you fail." Feng Na laughed and said, "You are really going too far. You don't study yourself, but you are discouraging others' enthusiasm for studying." The group of people chatted and laughed as they walked into the cafeteria. They were all handsome men and beautiful women, so they immediately attracted the attention of almost everyone in the cafeteria. Some of the boys who were eating looked at Li Yundong, who was surrounded by so many beautiful women. Their eyes turned red with jealousy, and they stabbed the spoons in their hands into their rice bowls, as if this could relieve their hatred. Li Yundong found a seat at a large table and sat down. Su Chan, Zhou Qin, Chow Kefi, Feng Na, and Ching Ching followed suit and sat down. For a moment, all the girls around them took their lunchboxes and left their seats one after another, lest they become the green leaves next to the red flowers. Li Yundong was already used to this kind of gaze. He smiled at Feng Na and Zhou Qin and said, "You don't believe my theory? I can prove it with mathematical formulas." Feng Na asked curiously, "Tell us. Let's see what nonsense you can come up with." Li Yundong chuckled and said, "According to your theory, revising equals not failing a subject, and not revising equals failing a subject, right?" The three female students, Zhou Qin, Feng Na, and Ching Ching, listened attentively and nodded. Li Yundong saw that there was a leftover plate next to him, so he picked up a pair of chopsticks, dipped the other end of the chopsticks in water, and wrote on the table, "So, revising plus not revising equals not failing a subject plus failing a subject." According to the mathematical method, we can extract the common factor so that we can obtain revising equals failing a subject. Then, we can divide the scores on both sides. So, revising equals failing a subject. After that, Li Yundong threw the chopsticks on the table. See? This is how the truth is born. Zhou Qin burst into laughter. She pursed her lips and said, "What a fallacy." Feng Na and Qing Qing didn't have the consciousness of maintaining the demeanor of a lady from a respectable family like Zhou Qin. They burst into laughter without a care for their image. Feng Na laughed so hard that she pounded the table, and Qing Qing rocked back and forth with laughter. Go to CNET. 7 KOM. Only Su Chan was blinking her eyes, looking from one to the other. She had no idea what they were laughing about. Yundong, what are you laughing at? Su Chan tugged at Li Yundong's sleeve. Li Yundong laughed. We're laughing at our studies. Didn't you get it? Su Chan pouted. Nope. I don't think it's funny at all. Chow Kefi laughed as well. All right. Let's go get our food first. We're starving. They got up and went to get their food. Everyone in the line was handsome and beautiful, so the waiter couldn't help but give them a generous portion of their food. This caused a storm of protests from the students lining up behind them. Li Yundong, Feng Na said with a smile. If what you just said gets on the forum, I'm afraid half of the students will fail their subjects this year. You have no idea how many people in this school are your fans. So, you have to watch your words and actions. You have to be a role model. Li Yundong laughed. Role model? Okay, I'll sing a song. You can post it on the forum tonight and tell everyone to sing it twice a day. I guarantee that they won't fail their subjects. Zhou Qin couldn't help but laugh. What kind of fallacy is this? Li Yundong looked aggrieved. Why are you talking about me like that? I'm such a pure and honest young man. Look at me, I even wrote my own lyrics to encourage my classmates to pass their exams. How noble and selfless I am. You should present me with a red flag on behalf of the party and the people. Feng Na smiled and said, Don't you already have a red flag? Li Yundong was stunned for a moment. Then he clapped his hands. Yeah, give me a red flag then. Chow Kefi, who had been listening to their banter with a smile, couldn't help but burst into laughter. Greedy snakes trying to swallow elephants. Qing Qing giggled and tapped the plate in front of Li Yundong with her chopsticks. Don't talk about these useless things, she urged. Hurry up and sing a song. Right here, right now. I've never heard you sing before. Li Yundong suddenly became bashful. Do you really want to sing? Ahem. My thing is a little rough. Can you guys stand it? Zhou Qin couldn't help but blush slightly. She spat and turned her face away. For a moment, she couldn't help but think of the absurd scene in the illusion, and her body couldn't help but heat up. Chow Kefi stared at Li Yundong, her eyes sparkling. She couldn't help but speculate about the boy in front of her. Is he born to flirt with girls like this? Or is he deliberately hinting at something? Su Chan giggled and fell into Li Yundong's arms. She reached out and pinched the flesh on Li Yundong's waist. You're so shameless. Qing Qing was obviously bold and unrestrained. She giggled and said, What is it? Explain yourself. A real man doesn't need to explain. Li Yundong said seriously. All the women at the table couldn't help but giggle. One by one, they said with a smile, sing quickly, we want to hear your first song. Li Yundong looked around and found that many students were looking at their table. Some of them were even taking pictures with their phones. Although Li Yundong had experienced many things that ordinary people couldn't, and his personality had become much calmer, he was still a teenager. He laughed and simply threw caution to the wind. He stood up, rolled up his sleeves, and said loudly, Okay, I'll sing a song for you today. Listen carefully. From now on, I'll sing it once in the morning and once in the evening. I promise you that you'll pass the exam. After that, Li Yundong sang loudly, my home lives on the Lus Plateau. The wind blows on the slope. Whether it's Li Yuchen or Zhang Yike, they're all my brothers. My home lives on the Lus Plateau. The sun blows on the slope. Whether it's Brother Chun or Brother Zhang, please bless me and bless me. Before he finished singing, the cafeteria burst into laughter. Zhou Qin couldn't care less about her ladylike image anymore. She laughed so hard that she almost fell into the bowl in front of her. Feng Na and Qing Qing even hugged each other, laughing so hard that they were on the verge of death. Chow Kefi was also laughing so hard that she kept wiping away her tears. She kept rubbing her stomach, shaking her head and secretly praising Li Yundong. Not only does this little guy have extraordinary skills, but he also has a pure heart and treats people with sincerity. He's also so funny. How can I not like him? The only one who didn't laugh was Su Chan. She didn't know what was so funny about it, but she saw that everyone around her was laughing. It seemed that she had to laugh, so she forced a dry laugh. The girl laughed for a while, then suddenly felt very wronged. She felt that she had nothing in common with Li Yundong. What's so great about him? I want to go to this school in the future. No, that's not right. Yundong said it was a university. I want to go to this university in the future. After Li Yundong finished singing, he smiled at the students around him, who were laughing so hard that they were rocking back and forth. Do you all remember it? Among the giggling students, there were some who were thick-skinned and brave enough to shout out loudly, remember. Li Yundong nodded and waved at the students in a very stylish manner. All right, remember to sing twice in the morning and twice in the evening. I promise you that you won't fail any subjects in the future. The students all agreed loudly, then turned around and started eating again. However, their laughter and conversation couldn't stop talking about Li Yundong, who had just sung passionately. No one knew why a youth who was usually low-key and ordinary would suddenly become an influential figure who would be the center of attention no matter where he went. But at this time, no one was going to look back on this matter. They were more interested in what kind of wonderful conversation topic Li Yundong had brought them. Even Li Yundong himself didn't know that this song, Believe in Brother Chun, Believe in Brother Zhang, Don't Fail Subjects, had quickly become popular throughout Tiannan University and became the unofficial school song. It was sung all year round when it came to exams. After greeting the students around him with a smile, Li Yundong sat down. Feng Na fell into Qing Cheng's arms with a smile on her face. She panted and said, Li Yundong, stop it. My intestines are going to break from laughing. Are you going to let me eat or not? Li Yundong said innocently, it's not that I want to play. You guys asked me to sing. Zhou Qin was about to say something when she suddenly heard a weak voice next to her. Li Yundong, hello. Can we sit down here? The table of handsome men and beautiful women turned their heads in unison and looked in the direction of the voice. Li Yundong took a look and saw two girls standing in front of the table. They were beautiful and looked exactly the same. Their clothes were the same, but the headbands on their heads were different. One was wearing a red headband, and the other was wearing a blue headband. They were the beautiful sisters Deng Yu and Deng Jiao, whom he had met before. /om/ Chapter 148. Go to Watch Network. It wasn't easy to see beautiful sisters who looked exactly the same. Li Yundong recognized them at once. He smiled and said, of course you can. Take a seat. Feel free to take a seat. Wow, that's great. Sister, I told you it would be fine. The girl with the red headband laughed and turned around to tug at the girl with the blue headband. Watch net. Net. Super_speed. New. The girl with the blue headband smiled shyly, and a trace of shyness flashed in the corner of her eyes. Li Yundong smiled and nodded at the girl with the red headband. You're Deng Yu, right? Deng Yu blinked at Li Yundong and said with surprise and joy, you still remember me? Li Yundong smiled. You two are so eye-catching. How could I forget you? And my Su-chan offended you. Don't mention it again, Su-chan said, holding Li Yundong's arm. I didn't do it on purpose. You're so annoying. Li Yundong laughed and rubbed the little girl's head. Deng Yu pulled her sister to a seat and handed a notebook to Li Yundong with a smile. Hee, I'm actually here for your autograph. Li Yundong took the notebook and smiled. Didn't you already sign it last time? I'm signing it for my sister this time, Deng Yu said with a smile. Deng Jiao, who was sitting next to her, suddenly pulled Deng Yu's arm. Deng Yu giggled and said, it's okay. You're not the only girl at school who has a crush on Li Yundong. Deng Jiao's cheeks were so red that it looked like they were about to drip blood. She stood up, stamped her feet, and said, how can you be like this? I'm going to ignore you. Then, she covered her face and ran out. Li Yundong shook his head and smiled. How can you treat your sister like this? Here you go. Is there anything else I can do for you? Deng Yu took the notebook with a smile and said, it's okay. She may not say it, but she can hold it in for a lifetime. How many years has she been in college? If she holds it in for a few more years, some words will never come out of her mouth. Feng Na couldn't help but laugh. What about you? Is there anything you want to say? You have to seize the opportunity. Deng Yu blushed, rolled her eyes, and smiled slyly. Even if I wanted to say something, I wouldn't do it here. There are so many beautiful women here. It's too stressful. With that, she giggled and waved the notebook at Li Yundong. Thank you so much. I'm leaving. I still need to be on duty after the exams in the afternoon. Li Yundong smiled and said, where are you busy? You didn't eat at McDonald's? Deng Yu giggled and said, I'm doing McDonald's too. It's just a part-time job. Anyway, I'm leaving. Watch net. With that, she quickly ran out of the cafeteria and shouted, sister, wait for me. Deng Jiao's voice came clearly from outside. I don't want to wait for you, you're so annoying. Li Yundong and the others looked at each other and smiled. Chao Kefi suddenly whispered to Su Chan, so many beautiful girls like Li Yundong. Aren't you jealous? Su Chan raised her head and said proudly, the more people like my master, the more it shows that I have good taste. Li Yundong laughed and put his arms around Su Chan's waist. Nonsense, no matter how good your taste is, you can't compare to mine. I picked the most beautiful little fairy in the world. Su Chan beamed with joy and asked proudly, who is it? Li Yundong tapped the little girl's nose and said, of course it's you, little fairy. Su Chan giggled, without a nose or eyes. The young couple acted as if there was no one else around, but Zhou Qin and the others had to suffer. They all lowered their heads and pretended to eat, but in their hearts, they were secretly sad. After dinner, Li Yundong asked Chao Kefi, is the banquet you mentioned today? Chao Kefi smiled and said, yes, we'll leave in a while. Li Yundong pointed at Su Chan and said, that's not a problem, but I have to take her with me. I won't go anywhere without her. Chao Kefi frowned in her heart, but she was shrewd and didn't show it. She just smiled and said, aren't you two a little too affectionate? Let's go together. It doesn't matter. Let's go. Li Yundong turned to look at Zhou Qin, Feng Na, and Ching Cheng. What about you guys? What are you going to do later? Coincidentally, as soon as Li Yundong finished speaking, Zhou Qin's cell phone rang. She picked up the phone and listened, and the smile on her face suddenly disappeared. She said with a cold face, what do you want from me? As soon as Zhou Qin's face fell, everyone at the table felt that the air around them seemed to have dropped a few degrees. Li Yundong and Su Chan looked at each other. After a while, Zhou Qin finished listening to the phone with a cold face. After hanging up, she reluctantly smiled at Li Yundong and said, sorry, I have something to do. I have to leave first. After that, she nodded at Chao Kefi, Feng Na, and Ching Ching, then quickly walked away. When Feng Na and Ching Ching saw that Zhou Qin had left, the atmosphere at the table suddenly became strange. Ching Ching pushed Feng Na's arm, and Feng Na said with a smile, I've also finished eating. We have an exam in the afternoon, so I'll go back and rest first. Li Yundong smiled and waved at Feng Na and Ching Ching. Thank you for today. Feng Na and Ching Ching also smiled and waved back, then left together. After watching the two of them leave, Li Yundong said to Chao Kefi, isn't it a little too early for us to go now? Chao Kefi smiled and said, it's okay. I'll take you to change your outfit first. Li Yundong suddenly remembered the shopping spree that had made him bankrupt and vomit blood. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. I have a good outfit, but I don't dare go back to get it. What's going on? Chao Kefi asked in confusion. Su Chan secretly pinched Li Yundong's arm, signaling him not to reveal anything about the cultivation world. Only then did Li Yundong wake up and change the subject. Nothing, let's go now. The three of them left the school gate, got into Chao Kefi's flashy sports car, and ran toward the city center. At this time, in a car with a red flag near Tiannan University, Zi Yuan was holding an antique glass mirror in her hand and looking at it attentively. In this ancient mirror, the scene of Li Yundong, Su Chan, and Chao Kefi talking and laughing in the car was reflected. Zi Yuan's expression was indifferent, as if she were an otherworldly master, indifferently looking at all the people in the world, watching the threads of shackles and fate entangled together. Ruan Hongling, who was sitting next to her, suddenly pointed at Chao Kefi in the mirror and said, Sister Zi Yuan, why does this person feel so strange? Zi Yuan nodded and said, this person's 3 souls and 7 spirits are incomplete. Among the 3 souls, the heaven soul and the earth soul are not in his body. Among the 7 spirits, the qi, the power, the essence, and the heroic spirit are also missing. It is indeed very strange. Ruan Hongling said strangely, there is such a person in this world. He can live with only 1 soul and 3 spirits? It's really weird. As she spoke, she suddenly said, Sister Zi Yuan, how long are we going to observe him like this? If my magical item stays in his hands for 1 more day, it will cost me more spiritual qi to refine it back in the future. Zi Yuan glanced at her faintly. Didn't you say that you were going to take it back yourself? Ruan Hongling suddenly blushed and said guiltily, how can I take it back by myself? Zi Yuan stared at the Tong Tian glass mirror in front of her, not looking at Ruan Hongling beside her. She said meaningfully, are you really alone? Ruan Hongling knew that she couldn't hide it from her Shiji. She braced herself and said, I'm going to take back what belongs to me. Is that wrong? Zi Yuan's tone was cold, and she said sternly, you actually went to find the people of the Divine Fist sect to deal with an ordinary person who has not yet reached the Zhuji phase. If this gets out, how will others look at our Lingong sect? Ruan Hongling straightened her neck and said loudly, that guy obviously has a witch by his side. He is also alone. Why can't I find a helper? Moreover, he is the successor of Jin Dan. How can he be measured as an ordinary person? He roared with qi, and I was almost scared out of my wits. Aren't you worried that I will die in his hands? Instead, you are worried that I will hurt your future husband? In your heart, I, a Shiji who has been with you for more than 10 years, am not as good as a newcomer who you have never met. Zi Yuan was furious, and her 2 willowy eyebrows slowly raised. However, when she looked at Ruan Hongling's stubborn face, the anger in her heart slowly subsided. She sighed and said, don't talk about the successor of Jin Dan and husband in the future. I have been observing him these days. I only feel that this person is obsessed with love and can't see through the suffering of the world of mortals. Although he has the help of Jin Dan, it will be difficult for him to become a great person in the future if he indulges in a pile of powder all day long. Ruan Hongling was overjoyed and echoed loudly, yes, yes, What future can a pervert like him have? Sister Zi Yuan, don't observe him anymore. We have observed him for long enough, and we have seen him clearly enough. Zi Yuan shook her head and said, it is difficult to draw a tiger's bones. You may know a person's face, but not his heart. Didn't you say before that this person is a lecherous evil person? But didn't you also see him roaring in the street for an old woman? It can be seen that this person is still quite brave and chivalrous. As long as there is chivalry in a person's heart, he will not be too bad. Even if he goes on a crooked path, he can still turn over a new leaf. Ruan Hongling couldn't help but say angrily, you are just protecting him. I really don't know what is so good about this person that you are so protective of him. Zi Yuan was not angry. She sighed faintly and said, I also want to know what is so good about him that he made Master leave such a psalm. Ruan Hongling said angrily, Psalm. 10 years ago, when Master died, he left behind this psalm. Since then, you have been like a devil. Our Linggong sect has declined to the point where we have been bullied by other sects of the same sect, but you have not said a word. As soon as you heard that Jin Dan had appeared, you immediately went down the mountain. How can there be a Shiji like you in the world? Your little Shiji has been bullied and her magical item has been taken away. Instead of helping her get it back, you are speaking up for the enemy. Zi Yuan was silent for a long time. She reached out and wiped the surface of the Tong Tian glaze mirror in front of her. Suddenly, the smoke and shadows lingering on the mirror disappeared. She said, don't worry, I will help you get your magical item back tonight. Ruan Hongling was overjoyed and hugged Zi Yuan's arm. That's my good Shiji. By the way, you must help me teach that lecher a lesson. Zi Yuan did not respond to Ruan Hongling's words. She raised her head and looked ahead with deep and misty eyes, as if she wanted to see through the thick fog of the mortal world to her future destiny and path. After a long time, Zi Yuan said faintly, by the way, I also want to get in touch with this Jin Dan successor and see what kind of person he is. Ruan Hongling was extremely angry when she heard this. She thought to herself, so you did it for that guy. Shiji, what is wrong with you? I am so angry. /om/. Chapter 149. Go to watch net. Chow Kefi had ulterior motives in asking Li Yundong to accompany her to the banquet. In her opinion, Li Yundong not only had superb skills and unpredictable kung fu skills, but also had an outstanding appearance and temperament. If he made a living in the film and television industry, he would definitely be popular. Watch net. 7ko/ Moreover, she was running a film and television company. If she could get Li Yundong into the industry and sign him, it would be no different from picking up a cornucopia. Those girls will go crazy for him. Chow Kefi did not doubt her own eyes and thought proudly. After preparing their outfits, Chow Kefi took them to the destination of the banquet. To Li Yundong's surprise, the banquet Chow Kefi took him to was held at the Xingyuan Hotel. Why are you here again? Li Yundong couldn't help but smile bitterly. Chow Kefi smiled bitterly and said, if the production team wants to set it here, what can I do? The production team? Li Yundong asked in confusion. Chow Kefi parked the car in front of the hotel and handed the keys to the valet. Then, she led the two of them into the hotel. As soon as the three of them entered the hotel, they immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people. They were all guessing who this young man who was surrounded by two beauties, one big and one small, was. Li Yundong looked around and said with a strange expression, why do I feel like they're looking at me like they're looking at a Japanese devil? Chow Kefi tried to hold back her laughter. Last time, you made their bathroom look like a demolition team. How could they not be wary of you? Li Yundong smiled awkwardly and said, that was just an accident. Su Chan was wearing a rose-red pleated dress that Chow Kefi had chosen for her. She looked elegant and charming. This was the second time she had come to this star-rated hotel. Although her eyes were still very curious, her expression was no longer timid and immature. She followed Li Yundong closely, swaying with each step. Her every movement revealed a peerless and enchanting temperament. Although Chow Kefi herself was also a rare gorgeous beauty, she thought that compared to Su Chan, she lacked the unique purity and beauty of a young girl. When these different temperaments appeared on a woman at the same time, she must be a peerless seductress who could turn all living things upside down. If only Su Chan could also enter the film and television industry. Chow Kefi sighed in her heart. Otherwise, she would definitely become a big star all over the world. Unfortunately, Chow Kefi knew very well that this was impossible. Although she hadn't known Li Yundong for a long time, Chow Kefi knew that although Li Yundong looked easygoing on the outside, he was a man with his own bottom line and principles. Moreover, he spoiled Su Chan very much. He would never let Su Chan get involved in the big vat of the film and television industry. Go to see. If Li Yundong only entered this industry on his own, it would be fine. With his strength and Chow Kefi's means, there would be a day when he would stand out. But if Su Chan entered this industry, it would definitely attract the coveting of all parties. Which man wouldn't want to have Su Chan for himself? All kinds of thoughts flashed through Chow Kefi's mind. She patted Li Yundong on the shoulder and pointed to a large banquet hall on the west side of the hall. Hey, over there. Li Yundong looked over and saw a red and black sign at the entrance of the large banquet hall, Sword Rain Jianghu, Kickoff Celebration Ceremony. Don't tell me you put this up for auction? Li Yundong asked with a smile. Chow Kefi laughed. How could I have so much money? Nowadays, how can a TV series be filmed without an 8-figure sum? If I had so much money, would I have been chased so badly by the debt collectors? Li Yundong asked in confusion. Then what is this? Chow Kefi laughed. I'm the producer. The producer is someone else. Oh, right. When we go in later, I'll tell them that you are friends of the media. Li Yundong was stunned. No way. Isn't that a blatant lie? Chow Kefi bumped Li Yundong's arm with her shoulder and smiled slyly. Don't be silly. There will be red packets. Then, she led Li Yundong and Su Chan to the door without waiting for Li Yundong to say anything else. A middle-aged man in his 40s with a crew cut stood at the door. As soon as he saw Chow Kefi, he laughed enthusiastically. Yo, President Chow, you're early. Chow Kefi was wearing a black evening gown. Her long skirt touched the ground with a low-cut V-shape. A sparkling gemstone necklace hung on her chest, making her look noble, elegant, sexy, and charming. Chow Kefi laughed. President Wang is welcoming us personally. How rare. The middle-aged man called President Wang looked at Li Yundong and Su Chan and asked with a smile, who are these two handsome men and beautiful women? Don't tell me they are newcomers from your company. They are of good quality. Chow Kefi covered her mouth and laughed. How could I have the luck to sign such good quality newcomers? They are friends of the media. Go to Kanban. President Wang immediately took out 2 red packets and stuffed them into Li Yundong and Su Chan's hands. He smiled and said, Oh, so you are friends from the media. Sorry for not recognizing you. Please come in. Thanks to Chow Kefi's reminder, Li Yundong had a rough idea of what was going to happen. He accepted the red envelope without batting an eyelid. Su Chan, on the other hand, blinked and stared at the red envelope, not knowing what it meant. Li Yundong quickly cleared his throat and accepted the red packet on Su Chan's behalf. Then, he smiled at President Wang. Sorry, she is a new intern. She doesn't know the rules. President Wang laughed and waved his hand. It's okay. Please come in. After watching the two of them enter the hall, he turned his head suspiciously and thought to himself, which media do you work for? Why do you have such outstanding looks and temperament? I've never seen you before, but I've never seen you before. However, CEO Wang had never expected that Chow Kefi would fabricate the identities of these two people. The 3 of them walked into the banquet hall. Chow Kefi smiled and praised them. Not bad. You have a bright future ahead of you. Aren't you afraid that they will ask us for our press credentials? Li Yunsong said with a smile. Chow Kefi chuckled and said, I still have some feelings in this line of work. They won't ask. Hey, you guys stay here and eat. I'll go say hello to a few friends. As she spoke, she greeted a few well-dressed people not far away, then smiled apologetically at Li Yundong and Su Chan, and walked over to them. Li Yundong looked around and felt that the hall was resplendent. Under his feet was the dark black marble floor, polished with a layer of shining wax. Above his head was a huge golden chandelier, magnificent and dazzling. There were about 100 people in the hall, and there was a banner hanging at the front of the stage. On the banner, there was a huge poster of Sword Rain World's launch ceremony, and behind the banner was a huge Sword Rain World poster. There were all kinds of well-dressed men and women in the hall, and some waiters with wine trays were shuttling back and forth. Since he had already had the experience of attending such a banquet, he naturally asked for a glass of soda from a waiter passing by. He sipped it while observing the situation around him. Su Chan, on the other hand, couldn't help but stare at the various fruits and delicacies placed on the rectangular main dining table. She looked like she really wanted to feast on them. Li Yundong noticed that Su Chan was getting restless. He quickly pulled Su Chan over and scolded her. Are you going to stack a pagoda like last time? Su Chan pouted. Can't I just eat a little bit? Li Yundong laughed. When did you only eat a little bit? I think you can finish all the food on this table by yourself. Su Chan's eyes lit up. Can I finish all the food on this table? Li Yundong rubbed his temples helplessly. I was defeated by you. Of course not. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong pitifully. I can only look but not eat? Wouldn't I die of cravings? Li Yundong scolded her with a smile. Look at you. You can't eat anything on this table. Haven't you lost enough face last time? Su Chan snorted. What's the point of putting it on the table if it can't be eaten? You're so annoying. Li Yundong moved closer to Su Chan and smiled mysteriously. Just bear with it. I'll treat you to something delicious when we get back. As he said this, he took out 2 red envelopes, rubbed them together, and laughed. We have money. Su Chan's eyes lit up. She grabbed Li Yundong's arm and shook it hard. Open it. Open it. Ever since Li Yundong had gone bankrupt, their lives had been going from bad to worse. They were short of money. Suddenly seeing that they had money, Su Chan immediately smiled. Li Yundong was just about to open the red envelope to take a look when he heard a strange man's voice coming from behind him. Hey, isn't this the legendary Master Tan Shui mentioned? Li Yundong turned around and saw a young, handsome man standing together with a fashionably dressed beautiful woman. They were looking him up and down. You are? Li Yundong asked, puzzled. The handsome young man was wearing a pure white suit. He was 1.85 meters tall, nearly half a head taller than Li Yundong. Although he was tall and had an extraordinary temperament, when he stood in front of Li Yundong, he immediately felt dwarfed. It was as if he had to look up at the young man who was even shorter than him. The handsome young man had been listening to Tan Shui's gossip. She had seen the horrifying fight between Li Yundong and Lin Youfa in the bathroom last time. He had always scoffed at the incident. Everyone in the circle knows that Tan Shui is a big mouth, right? It's good enough that even 10% of what she says can be trusted. Tan Shui. The handsome young man looked Li Yundong up and down. The loathing and rejection of the same sex made him subconsciously belittle and look down on Li Yundong. He turned around and waved at Tan Shui. Is this the guy you're talking about? Tan Shui and Li Yundong had a bit of a dirty relationship. She had always thought that Li Yundong was a pretty boy kept by Chow Kefi and only knew how to act cool and pretentious. But after seeing Li Yundong's terrifying skills with her own eyes, she realized that he was not a pretentious boy, but a pretentious hero. Although Tan Shui was still a little embarrassed to see Li Yundong, her tone was full of surprise and admiration when she talked about him behind his back. Standing in front of Tan Shui was Zhang Guozheng and another young man with a crew cut and wearing a red tang suit. Tan Shui was wearing a beautiful cheongsam, looking sexy and attractive. She greeted Li Yundong a little unnaturally. Despite the previous conflict, Li Yundong still nodded politely to her. When Zhang Guozheng saw Li Yundong, his eyes were full of fear, as if he had seen a big devil. He avoided Li Yundong's eyes and didn't dare to greet Li Yundong. However, the young man in the red tang suit standing in front of Tan Shui came up. He looked at Li Yundong with a pair of bright eyes, then cupped his hands and said, "I'm Sherneng, a disciple of the Northern Shaolin Temple, the successor of the Iron Palm. I heard that your kung fu is good. I wonder which sect do you practice?" Li Yundong noticed that although the young man was not tall, only 1.7 meters, his temples were high and his arms were abnormally thick. The blood vessels on his forearms that were exposed outside his clothes were as thick as a pinky finger, and his hands were covered with thick calluses. It was obvious that he had practiced the Iron Palm. The handsome man next to Li Yundong said with a smile, "Sherneng, didn't you just say that you wanted to make friends with him and exchange pointers with him? Now, your chance is here." Sherneng's eyes lit up and he stared at Li Yundong. We martial artists are naturally itchy when we meet a strong opponent. "Friend, let's have a little exchange, /om/." Chapter 150. Go to the internet. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He felt like he was like the famous detective Conan. Wherever he went, he would fight with people. However, Conan was a jinx. Wherever he went, people would die. But wherever he went, there would be conflicts and fights. Go to the internet. Go to the internet, could it be that I'm one of the 3 jinxes? Li Yundong laughed at himself in his heart. Li Yundong waved his hand and said, "It's not good to fight here, is it?" Before Sherneng had time to speak, the handsome man next to him added fuel to the fire with a smile, "Don't go too far. This place is very spacious, and if the media take pictures, we can hype it up." "Why not?" Li Yundong frowned secretly and looked at the man who had been fanning the flames from the beginning. He said unhappily, "Who are you?" Before the man had time to speak, Su Chan suddenly pointed at him and said loudly, "Ah, I know you. You are Guo Peng." Guo Peng had been secretly paying attention to Su Chan. When he saw that Su Chan had recognized him, he was secretly overjoyed. He tried to control his emotions, but he couldn't hide the smug smile at the corner of his mouth. "You know me? Have you watched my TV series?" Su Chan nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes. Guo Peng couldn't help it anymore. He smiled proudly and said modestly, "Alas, it was a film 1 or 2 years ago. It was not good. I let you laugh at me." But his expression was like a proud male peacock showing its beautiful feathers, like a peacock spreading its tail. Whether it was his eyebrows or the corners of his mouth that were raised proudly, it seemed to be saying, "Praise me, worship me." After listening to him, Su Chan nodded vigorously and said, "Well, it really doesn't look good. You acted so silly in it." The gap was so big that Guo Peng's smile suddenly froze. Tan Shui, who was not far from him, laughed out loud. Even the woman standing next to him couldn't help but cover her mouth and snicker. Go to the internet. Li Yundong held back his laughter, glared at Su Chan, and pretended to be angry. "What nonsense are you talking about?" He pulled Su Chan behind him and hit her. Then, he reached behind him and gave her a thumbs up, indicating that she had done a good job. The corners of Guo Peng's eyes twitched. He forced a dry laugh and said, "I already said it was taken in the past. It's very immature. See?" After that, his eyes fell on Li Yundong again and he said, "Tan Shui tried her best to praise your skills in front of us. Today, in front of so many people, why don't you show a few moves? Don't you want to give face to so many people? Li Yunyang frowned. Before he could say anything, Shining smiled and said, if you're afraid of getting hurt, we can fight with words. Guo Peng immediately asked, what is a battle of wits? Shining smiled but didn't say anything. He waved at the waiter beside him and whispered a few words in his ear. The waiter nodded and quickly walked away. After about a few minutes, the waiter came over with a rattan cup made of rattan. Is this it? Shining took it with a smile and said, yes, thank you. As he spoke, he handed over a 50 yuan tip. The waiter took it with a smile and turned to leave. Shining shook the rattan cup in his hand at Li Yundong and smiled. He was not in a hurry to explain. He held the rattan cup full of holes with both hands, called a waiter, and said to the waiter, please bring me a bottle of water. The waiter was puzzled, but he still did as he was told. He went to the cabinet and took a thermos flask. Shining said to the waiter, pour water into the cup in my hand. The waiter was shocked. Not only him, but even Tan Shui and the others not far away were moved. They all came closer and stared at the rattan teacup in Sherning's hand with wide eyes. Li Yundong looked at Shining calmly, and his attention was also on the teacup made of small rattan. It was better to say that it was a teacup set than a teacup, because it was full of diamond-shaped holes. Although each hole was only a little big, after the water was poured in, it would immediately leak out. It didn't look like a cup of water at all, but more like a teacup set for holding teacups. Look! Shining actually said that he wanted to pour water into this teacup set. Wasn't he afraid of scalding his hands? What was this guy up to? The waiter hesitated and didn't dare to pour water into the rattan cup full of holes. Shining smiled and tried to persuade him, but the waiter still shook his head and didn't dare to. Shining couldn't help but glare at him and shout in a low voice, if I tell you to pour it, then pour it. If something happens, it's my own business. Although Shining practiced external martial arts, his body was full of essence and qi. With this glare, the waiter trembled all over. He subconsciously picked up the water bottle, pulled out the cork, and poured the water into the rattan cup. Color. Super_speed. Faster. Look. The people around suddenly widened their eyes and looked at the cup in Sherning's hand. They seemed to have seen Shining screaming because of the heat in the next second. However, as soon as the water poured into the rattan cup, it was as if it had been poured into a porcelain cup. Not a single drop of water leaked out. Shining held the rattan cup with both palms. His face was slightly red, and the blue veins on his forehead were bulging. He seemed to be trying to control his qi, but at this time, almost everyone's attention was focused on the rattan teacup in his hand, and no one noticed his abnormality. Isn't it amazing? Tan Shui's eyes widened and she couldn't help exclaiming in a low voice. The waiter who poured the water was even more shocked. He looked at Shining as if he was looking at a god. He couldn't understand why the water poured into the cup full of holes, but it didn't leak at all. Li Yundong couldn't help being stunned, but soon Su Chan behind him snorted and whispered, it's just a little trick. Don't be surprised. Li Yundong tilted his head slightly and asked in confusion, how did he do it? Su Chan wrote a word on Li Yundong's back with her finger, qi. It suddenly dawned on Li Yundong that Shining had used the qi in his body to seal the small holes around the rattan cup. In addition, the water itself had tension. As long as a person with a slightly stronger qi came out, they could seal the water in the rattan cup so that it wouldn't leak out. Seeing that Li Yundong had understood, Su Chan giggled and said, you can do it too. You don't even need this rattan cup. With your powerful Jin Danjinqi, it's enough to protect this invisible water. Li Yundong was shocked. He turned his head and asked, can I do it without this cup? Su Chan nodded and snorted. Of course you can. This kind of thing is like a shintong in the eyes of others, but for us cultivators, it's just a basic skill. Yundong, how dare they look down on you? Teach them a lesson. Before Li Yundong had time to ask Su Chan what to do, he heard Guo Peng say to him, "See? This is real kung fu." Zhang Guizheng, Tan Shui, and the others nodded one after another. They stared at the cup in Shi Ning's hand, as if they were waiting to see when a drop of water would leak out. It was more like they were waiting to see if Shi Ning would feel hot. But in fact, the boiling water looked hot, as if it could burn off a piece of skin if it touched a person's body. However, Shi Ning's palm was full of thick calluses, which were dead skin without any feeling. Naturally, he was not afraid of the temperature of the boiling water. At this time, Li Yundong had fully understood the trick, so he didn't feel that there were many magical and mysterious places in it. Seeing that Li Yundong's face was full of disapproval, Guo Peng added fuel to the fire with a smile. "Master, how about you show us a few moves?" Shi Ning showed his skills. Seeing the people around him exclaim in surprise, he couldn't help but feel proud. In his opinion, he had practiced martial arts for more than 10 years since he was a child to have such kung fu. The boy in front of him looked much younger than him, so he probably didn't know any real kung fu. Without waiting for Li Yundong to agree, he handed the cup in his hand to Li Yundong and said with a smile, "Why don't you give it a try?" Li Yundong was inexperienced and arrogant. He sneered in his heart. "Let's give it a try. What's so great about it?" As soon as he stretched out his hand, Guo Peng passed by a waiter. Suddenly, he rolled his eyes and pretended to be hit. With a cry, he bumped into Shi Ning. At this time, Shi Ning's whole body was protecting the cup between his hands. With such a collision, his whole body's qi suddenly scattered. The rattan teacup in his hand also tilted, and the boiling water splashed toward Li Yundong with a splash. "Be careful. Watch out." There were a few exclamations around. The moment Shi Ning's body tilted, Li Yundong keenly felt an uneasy sense of crisis. Although it was not very strong, it still made him nervous and vigilant. As soon as the boiling water splashed out of the cup, Li Yundong immediately lowered his waist. With a twist of his wrist, he patted the base of the rattan teacup with his palm. The teacup immediately flew out of Shi Ning's hands and drew an arc in the air. Li Yundong's other hand quickly released a large amount of vigorous xinqi, firmly controlling the splashing water. He wiped his hand in the air, and as if there was a magnet in his palm, he quickly gathered all the water droplets splashing in the air into his palm. They condensed and did not dissipate, like a water ball. Just as he gathered the splashed water droplets, the rattan teacup flying in the air fell in front of Li Yundong's eyes. Li Yundong saw it accurately. He stuffed the water ball in his hand into the rattan teacup and held it with the palm of his other hand. The splashed water from the rattan teacup returned to the teacup, and the rattan teacup stopped firmly in Li Yundong's palm. The Jindan primordial qi in Li Yundong's body was more than 10 times or dozens of times stronger than Shi Ning's. As soon as he released his xinqi, all the small holes in the rattan teacup were filled with qi, as if it was covered with a glass cover, and not a single drop of water could leak out. Li Yundong felt that it was interesting enough to control the teacup with the xinqi released by one hand. He suddenly thought of something and used one finger to push the bottom of the teacup, releasing the qi of his whole body through one finger. Just now, everyone saw that Guo Peng, Shi Ning, and Li Yundong seemed to be shooting a well-directed action film. Li Yundong's movements were so fast that they were all dazzled. By the time they reacted, Li Yundong had already used one finger to hold the teacup and looked at them with a smile on his face. Shi Ning covered the teacup with both hands so that the water in it would not leak out. In the eyes of Tan Shui, Guo Peng, Zhang Guizheng, and the others, this was already very magical, but Li Yundong's performance just now was even more exaggerated. Even a blind person could see the difficulty of covering the teacup with 2 palms and 1 finger under the teacup. The surrounding people were stunned and exclaimed in shock, "Holy sh*t, it can't be? A magic show? Nonsense, this is real kung fu." Shi Ning was also shocked. He had never seen such kung fu. Shi Ning stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes and said in horror in his heart, This man is so young. I didn't expect that his qi refining had already reached the peak. Li Yundong smiled slightly, glanced at Guo Peng, and then said to Shi Neng, "Wen Duan? You can't do it." Tan Shui, who was standing to one side, shook her head secretly when she heard this. She muttered in horror and admiration, as expected of a pretentious hero. Where did this freak come from? C/OM/. Chapter 151. Go to Watch Network. After all, Li Yundong was young and aggressive. His words made Shi Neng's face suddenly turn red. Go to Quan Net. 7KOM. Net. Super_speed. More. New. As a Shaolin disciple, Shi Neng joined the film and television industry. He had a good image and excellent kung fu. Although he entered the industry as a martial arts master, he was quickly noticed by the director and was regarded as a potential stock of the new generation of martial arts stars. It didn't matter if he lost the battle of culture at such a banquet, but he couldn't accept such a thing being said to him. Everyone in the entertainment industry had a big mouth. If they said something here today, it would immediately spread to everyone's ears tomorrow. Shi Neng thought to himself, if this gets out, how can I survive in this circle in the future? No, I must get back at him today. Although the qi refining realm Li Yundong had shown shocked Shi Neng, he didn't think that Li Yundong could beat him. There was a saying in the martial arts world, those who can speak may not be able to practice, those who can practice may not be able to fight, and those who can fight may not be able to speak, let alone practice. A few years ago, domestic experts went to Thailand for an exchange, but they were beaten so badly that they came back. Why didn't a so-called master come out to turn the tide? Nowadays, the masters were more talkative and good at practicing, but they all cherished their own feathers. None of them could fight. In the last Wulin convention, a fighting enthusiast who had learned Sanda for 3 years challenged a so-called master. As a result, he beat the opponent black and blue with just a few punches and kicks. It could be seen that practicing moves on a daily basis and fighting in real life were two different things. Some masters practiced pushing hands and qigong like immortals, but once they fought, they were not as good as a wrestler who had only learned Sanda for a few years. Shi Neng felt that with his actual combat experience, he might be able to win if he competed with the boy in front of him in a fight. Shi Neng had made up his mind. He immediately took a deep breath and got rid of the shock and fear in his mind. He calmed himself down and said in a deep voice, I can't fight with words. How about we try fighting with words? As he spoke, he reached out and grabbed Li Yundong's hand that was holding the teacup. Shi Neng's grab seemed simple, but in fact, it was full of evil intentions. His thumb was clasped inside his palm, his index finger was slightly bent, and his ring finger was clasped inside. Once he grabbed the opponent's wrist, his thumb, index finger, and ring finger would immediately grab the Yanggu, Yang Qi, and Yangshi acupoints on Li Yundong's wrist. Yang Valley, Yang Pond, and Yang Stream, as their names suggested, were valleys, ponds, and streams where Yang Qi flowed. The capacity of Yang Qi that could flow through these three places was different, so there was the division of valley, pond, and stream. Watch Net. 7KOM. As long as these three places were buckled, the Yang Qi of the human body would not be able to run to the hands. In this way, the strength and Qi of the human body would naturally not be able to be transmitted to the wrists. The rattan teacup on Li Yundong's fingers would immediately fall, and the boiling water would spill out. Naturally, Li Yundong would make a fool of himself, and Shi Neng would get his face back. In the blink of an eye, Shi Neng's wishful thinking was not bad. He not only got his face back without batting an eyelid, but he also didn't hurt Li Yundong, preserving his demeanor. But the only thing he didn't expect was that Li Yundong had fought a few times with the gangsters, survived under the threat of guns, and then fought 2 battles with Lin Youfa. During this period, the actual combat experience he had accumulated was only a lot more than Shi Neng. Seeing the other party's hand coming over, Li Yundong flicked his finger slightly, flicking the teacup in his hand up, and then immediately stretched out his hand. His index finger was like a javelin as it pierced towards the Laogong acupoint on the other party's palm. If the Laogong acupoint was pierced, with Li Yundong's qi training kung fu, Sherneng wouldn't be able to lift his arm again within an hour. Sherneng was slightly surprised by Li Yundong's response. He quickly turned his clasp into a claw, and his hands suddenly changed from a soft hidden force to a strong and powerful eagle claw. His 5 fingers were like iron hooks as they grabbed towards Li Yundong's finger. If he grabbed it this time, Sherneng would use a little more force and Li Yundong's finger would definitely be broken with a crack. However, Li Yundong seemed to have predicted what the other party was going to do. Almost at the same time, he also flipped his palm, and his 5 fingers touched the other party's 5 fingers. This happened so quickly that Sherneng didn't even have time to react before the 5 fingers of the 2 men collided. Li Yundong's body had been recreated by the Jin Dan. He had jumped down from the 4th floor with a living person in his arms, but he was still fine. It could be seen how strong his body was. His hands looked white and gentle, but as soon as he ran his qi, his 5 fingers seemed to have swelled up in an instant. They were as strong and hard as steel bars. With a kacha sound, the sound of bones breaking came from Sherneng's finger. Go to CNET. 7:ko/ At this time, the teacup that Li Yundong had bounced up fell down. He held it with his palm and turned his wrist. A soft force arose spontaneously, and the teacup began to spin in his palm. Li Yundong lifted his finger and held the teacup on the tip of his finger like juggling. Still, not a drop of water spilled. The moment the 2 of them fought, it was only a few seconds. Sherneng suffered a big loss, and his finger bones were broken by Li Yundong. However, he was tough and didn't show any expression of pain. He just looked at Li Yundong with a wooden face and fear in his eyes. How is this possible? Sherneng shouted in his heart in horror. Even my master doesn't dare to touch my fingers. Looking at the whole Chinese martial arts world, there are not many masters who can break the bones of my fingers. Sherneng had practiced both the iron palm and the eagle claw kung fu. The kung fu of his hands was no small matter. He could crush a glass cup with his hands, and he could do 2-finger zen with his fingers. He could also break a 10-centimeter thick wooden board with 1 finger. Even if others hit his fingers with a wooden stick, they might not be able to hurt him at all. But even so, he was still hit by Li Yundong and his bones were broken. It was like a running sports car had crashed into a train. At this time, the fight between Li Yundong and Sherneng had attracted the attention of many people at the banquet. Many guests watched Li Yundong's acrobatic performance and applauded one after another. They didn't know the knowledge and killing intent hidden in the fight between Li Yundong and Sherneng, and they didn't know how terrifying this young and handsome man was in Sherneng's heart. This man is so young, but his kung fu is so powerful. I really don't know which sect of kung fu he practices, and which famous teacher taught him. Sherneng lowered his arms, using the sleeves of his tang suit to cover his slightly trembling fingers. Li Yundong was well aware of Sherneng's seemingly casual attacks just now, but in fact, they were merciless. He glanced at Sherneng and said lightly, "How about it? Are you convinced? You can't fight with words, and you can't fight with martial arts either." After that, Li Yundong turned his head and looked at Guo Peng, who had an unnatural expression on his face. He said sarcastically, "Now you know if I have real kung fu or not. Or do you want to try it yourself?" Guo Peng's face was ugly, and his lips were wriggling. No one knew what he was saying. Tan Shui smiled and came to smooth things over. She took the initiative to lean against Li Yundong's side and threw herself into his arms. She giggled and said, "Handsome, you are really powerful. I really don't know how you practiced kung fu at such a young age. Do you have time to teach me?" As she spoke, her snow-white thigh, which was exposed from the slit in the cheongsam, rubbed against Li Yundong's leg intentionally or unintentionally. Chow Kefi, who was not far away, had been paying attention to Li Yundong's movements. She saw that there was some conflict between Li Yundong and Shi Neng, but she didn't stop it. In her opinion, this was more conducive to promoting Li Yundong. Sure enough, the director who was chatting with her also noticed the conflict between Li Yundong and Shi Neng. Director Zhang, who was a little famous in the circle, laughed and said, "The little friend you brought seems to have a little friction with Shi Neng." Chao Kefi smiled and said, "He's a young man. It's normal." While the two of them were talking, Li Yundong had already defeated Shi Neng twice. His amazing performance left the director tongue-tied for a long time. After a while, he slapped his thigh and said regretfully, "Why wasn't there a camera just now?" After that, he said to Chao Kefi excitedly, "Who is this young man? What's his name? If he comes to our crew, I'll tailor-make a role for him. I'll make sure he'll be famous." Chao Kefi was secretly overjoyed. She smiled reservedly and said, "Director Zhang, don't get excited, don't get excited. He can't run away." Only then did Director Zhang realize that he had lost his composure. He took a sip of wine and used the action of drinking to hide his emotions, but his eyes were still fixed on Li Yundong, as if he was looking at a peerless treasure. At this time, the guests who had noticed Li Yundong also whispered to each other, "Who is this? He's very handsome. Yes, he looks like he knows some kung fu. He looks very strong. He doesn't just look strong. He's obviously very strong." Li Yundong didn't know that these people around him were pointing at him and talking about him. He awkwardly dodged Tan Shue's harassment, and when he took a step back, he happened to bump into the girl. Su Chan poked her head out from behind Li Yundong and said coquettishly, "You stepped on me." As soon as Su Chan's beautiful face was revealed, Tan Shui was immediately shocked. In front of Su Chan, a peerless genius, except for top beauties like Zhou Qin and Chao Kefi who could barely compete with her, the girl's outstanding beauty and unique temperament were enough to defeat all opponents, even if the other party was a film and television star with the title of Screen Fairy. Li Yundong took the opportunity to turn his head and get rid of Tan Shue's harassment. He turned back and pinched the girl's nose. "I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry." The girl made a face at Li Yundong, wrinkled her little nose, and smiled coquettishly. "I'm hungry." Li Yundong turned around and smiled at Tan Shui. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm going to accompany my girlfriend to eat something." Tan Shue's heart skipped a beat. Such a beautiful girl is his girlfriend. Tan Shui gave Li Yundong a sheepish smile, then watched as the two of them left, chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened between them. At that moment, Tan Shui felt a deep sense of inferiority. She looked at the girl's pure eyes and suddenly felt dirty for no reason at all. Li Yundong and Su Chan stood in front of the rectangular main dining table, chatting and laughing as they ate desserts. Suddenly, a familiar figure flashed in Su Chan's line of sight. "Hey, isn't that Zhou Qin?" Su Chan pointed at a girl who was standing outside the hall gracefully. Li Yundong looked in the direction of her finger and saw Zhou Qin and Ding Nan leaning against each other intimately. Ding Nan seemed to be whispering something to Zhou Qin, and the two of them slowly walked toward the elevator of the building. "Huh? Didn't the two of them have a falling out?" Li Yundong asked in confusion. "Maybe they made up," Su Chan said disapprovingly. A bad feeling flashed through Li Yundong's mind. He was just about to go up and say hello when he suddenly felt a pat on his shoulder. Li Yundong turned his head and saw a girl looking at him with a sweet smile. Her eyes were wide and her face was full of surprise. "It's you?" Li Yundong laughed in surprise. "What are you doing here, /om/?" Chapter 152. Go to CNET. The girl standing in front of Li Yundong was none other than Deng Yu, whom he had met in the cafeteria at noon. This beautiful twin sister was wearing a milky yellow waitress uniform, which made her figure appear graceful. Her usual youthful and inexperienced student aura was covered up by the well-ironed uniform, and she had the temperament of a uniformed girl out of thin air. Go to see net. 7 KOM. Net. Super_speed. More. New. Deng Yu's eyes curved into arcs. I'm the one who should be asking you. Why are you here? Li Yundong laughed and pointed at Chao Kefi, who was not far away. President Chao brought me here to broaden my horizons. Deng Yu glanced at Chao Kefi and suddenly covered her mouth with her fingers. Ah, you mean the person who had lunch with you in the cafeteria was President Chao? Oh, you are so charming. You can actually make someone like President Chao eat with you in the cafeteria. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Li Yundong waved his hand and laughed. Now it's your turn to tell me why you are here. You said you were on duty in the afternoon. Don't tell me it's here. Deng Yu smiled sweetly. Yes, I was handing out flyers on the street the other day and saw that the Xingyuan Hotel was hiring summer college students, so I signed up. Not only me, but my sister is also here. Deng Yu waved at her sister, who was not far away from her. The shy Deng Jiao also waved at Li Yundong slightly, a faint lilac smile appearing at the corner of her mouth. If it weren't for Li Yundong's amazing eyesight, he wouldn't have been able to see this small movement at all. Heh, you two sisters work here? It's so rare to see you here. Li Yundong was about to say something else when the foreman suddenly waved at Deng Yu. Deng Yu said in a hurry, "Oh, I have to go. You have fun here by yourself. I'll talk to you later." Then she turned around and walked away quickly. But after taking 2 steps, she seemed to think of something. She turned back and waved at Su Chan, "And you, have fun too." Su Chan waved at Deng Yu with a smile, then said to Li Yundong with a smile, "Yundong, you have so many friends. How can you meet them everywhere?" Li Yundong turned around and looked at the hall. By the way, where are Zhou Qin and Ding Nan? But at this time, Zhou Qin and Ding Nan were nowhere to be seen in the hall. Maybe they've already left, Su Chan said, smacking her lips as she ate the dessert. Li Yundong frowned. He always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. He thought for a while, shook his head, and put this matter aside for the time being. Alas, Zhou Qin, you know that I hate you to death. Why did you still drink that drink? Inside the elevator, Ding Nan supported Zhou Qin, who was on the verge of collapse, and sighed. Although she felt that she was sweating all over and had a strong sense of guilt, she was also supported by a strong sense of excitement. She held Zhou Qin's body and made sarcastic remarks from time to time. Watch net. 7 KOM. You're just too confident. As soon as I asked you out, you came without any explanation. You always look like you have the overall situation in your hands. You were like this when Zhao Yujin pointed a gun at you, and you were like this just now. Please, save it. Ding Nan sneered. Do you know what I'm going to do later? Zhou Qin looked like she was in a daze, and her hands and feet seemed to be unable to use any strength. She struggled and said, Ding Nan, don't get yourself into trouble. Get myself into trouble? Ha! Ding Nan sneered. On the contrary, except for you, everyone has to applaud my decision. Including your powerful father behind you. With a ding-dong, the elevator rang. Ding Nan carried Zhou Qin's body slowly to room 1503 on the 15th floor. She pressed the doorbell. After a while, the door creaked open, revealing a gloomy face. It was He Xiao. Ding Nan carried Zhou Qin into the room and threw her on the bed. She squatted down and patted Zhou Qin's cheek. Look carefully. This is your fiancé. Ding Nan crossed her legs on the bed and smiled proudly at He Xiao. I've got her for you. Anyway, she's a woman you haven't married yet. You can do whatever you want with her. After this, the rice will be cooked. You have to remember how good I am as a matchmaker. He Xiao stood at the side and rubbed his chin with one hand. He didn't answer, but he kept looking back and forth between Zhou Qin and Ding Nan with an evil smile on his face. Zhou Qin collapsed on the bed, and her eyes were filled with anger. Ding Nan, you're crazy. Ding Nan raised her head and laughed out loud. I'm crazy? Maybe so. Zhou Qin, didn't I tell you before? An excellent man is like a treasure without an owner. Any woman wants to take it for herself. This is a war. Since it's a war, we have to be unscrupulous and merciless. As she said this, Ding Nan bent down and pinched Zhou Qin's chin hard. Her beautiful face suddenly became ferocious. She lowered her voice and roared like an angry lioness. You taught me this before, Zhou Qin. In the past, you asked me to be your shield. Now, it's your turn to taste what it's like to be insulted. Zhou Qin gritted her teeth and said, aren't you afraid that I'll take revenge on you later? Revenge? Ding Nan laughed out loud. She took out a check from her bag. This is the deposit that young Master He promised me. When it's done, there will be more. What's more, didn't I tell you before that you and young Master He are in a relationship? I'm afraid that everyone but you will be happy. As she said this, Ding Nan sneered. Including Li Jiandong, who you've been pestering. Don't worry, he will never feel the slightest bit of pity for a woman like you. A woman like you exudes cold-bloodedness and cruelty from a powerful family from head to toe. The blurred look in Zhou Qin's eyes gradually disappeared, replaced by a deep and chilling indifference and sarcasm. She said coldly, you are too vicious, Ding Nan. I didn't realize that you were such a vicious woman. Ding Nan was caught in a kind of self-satisfaction and self-expansion. She had been living in the shadow of Zhou Qin, living in darkness and compromising. But now, she had the pleasure of trampling Zhou Qin under her feet and letting her do whatever she wanted. This feeling made her lose her usual sharp observation skills, and for a moment, she became complacent. Go to see the net. Chanjom Ding Nan laughed. She pointed at Zhou Qin and scolded, I'm vicious? Bah, back on the rooftop, you could say that you wanted me to die and let you live. Now you have the face to say that I'm vicious? Aren't you just relying on your money and power to manipulate a girl like me who has no money and power at will? The more Ding Nan spoke, the angrier she became. She raised her hand and slapped Zhou Qin's face, but just as she was about to slap down, she was caught by young Master He. Ding Nan looked back and saw young Master He smiling evilly at her and saying, you can't hit a woman. Ding Nan angrily broke free from young Master He's hand. Then, she looked at Zhou Qin coldly and said, Zhou Qin, you can enjoy it here slowly. Even if you shout until your throat is broken, no one will come to save you. After saying that, she turned around and was about to leave. But at this time, as soon as she took a step forward, she felt dizzy and her hands and feet seemed to be out of control. Just as she was at a loss, Ding Nan suddenly saw Zhou Qin sit up on the bed on her own. This shock was no small matter. Ding Nan felt as if someone had punched her in the heart. Her legs involuntarily went soft, and her body fell limply to the side of the bed. In the room, young Master He couldn't hold it in any longer and burst out laughing. Zhou Qin sat up straight and looked at Ding Nan with pity in her eyes. She closed her eyes slightly and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, the pity in her eyes no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by a terrible indifference. You must find it very strange that I can still sit up on my own, while you fell limply. Zhou Qin stared at Ding Nan, who had a frightened expression on her face, and said lightly. The sudden reversal of the situation, whether it was mental or physical, was unacceptable to Ding Nan. She looked at Zhou Qin in fear and said in a hoarse voice, What did you do to me? Zhou Qin sneered and said, Whatever you did to me, I did to you. Yes, you're right. I'm very confident, but what you said is not completely correct. I'm not only confident, but also conceited. So I really didn't expect you to dare to do anything to me. As she said this, Zhou Qin raised her head and looked meaningfully at young Master He, who was watching the two girls with interest. It wasn't until young master he called me that I knew you were so bold. In order to get rid of me, you really did it by hook or by crook." As Zhou Qin spoke, she leaned forward slightly and said in a cold voice, "Even if you get rid of me, will you be able to get Li Yundong?" Although Ding Nan's body was not in good condition, her mind was still clear. She laughed out loud and said, "Only you are my formidable opponent." Su Chan. That naive little girl, what does she know? After living with Li Yundong for so long, one of them is still a virgin, and the other is still a virgin. I'm dying of laughter. As long as I kick you out, with my means, I can naturally capture this boy easily and control him. Zhou Qin sneered and said, "You really think highly of yourself." Ding Nan yelled hysterically, "Isn't that right? If young master he hadn't told you, would you be so proud now?" As she said this, Ding Nan stared at young master he with resentment. She gritted her teeth and said, "Why did you betray me? If you have Zhou Qin, won't you get everything you want?" Young master he laughed. He rubbed his chin and said, Ding Nan, you think you know Zhou Qin very well, but in fact, as a childhood sweetheart who grew up with Zhou Qin, I am the person who knows Zhou Qin the best in the world." As he said this, he looked at Zhou Qin with a complicated expression. His eyes were filled with love, hate, respect, and fear for this girl. "I grew up in the same courtyard as her. Ever since I was young, Zhou Qin had a temper that would rather break than bend." Young master he pulled a chair and sat down, then said leisurely, "When she was 10 years old, Uncle Zhou wanted to take her to move. Zhou Qin refused to leave the courtyard of the municipal party committee. No matter how Uncle Zhou persuaded or scolded her, she refused to listen. In the end, Uncle Zhou had no choice but to tie Zhou Qin up and throw her into the back seat of the car. Then, he took her to Tiannan City. As soon as we arrived in Tiannan City, Uncle Zhou looked at the back seat. Guess what? Although young master he was laughing, his body was shivering. He sneered and said, Zhou Qin used her teeth to bite the rope that trapped her wrist. In the end, her teeth broke and the artery on her wrist was also bitten through. Blood flowed all over her, and even the back seat of the car was soaked. Although Ding Nan hated Zhou Qin to the extreme, she still looked at Zhou Qin in shock. It was as if she could not imagine that a 10-year-old girl would be so cruel to herself. From then on, Uncle Zhou no longer dared to force Zhou Qin to do anything. From then on, I knew that Zhou Qin was a wild horse that could not be tamed with brute force. Her body was more restricted than anyone else, but her soul yearned for freedom more than anyone else. Young Master He's eyes suddenly became very blurred. He let out a long sigh and then said to Ding Nan, even if I use force to have sex with Zhou Qin, what else can I get other than a corpse and then become enemies with the Zhou family? Young Master He sneered and said, you think I'm too retarded, and you think Zhou Qin is too simple. Zhou Qin sneered and said, why are you saying all this nonsense? As she said this, Zhou Qin glanced at Ding Nan, who was lying motionless on the bed. I'll leave her to you. You can do whatever you want. Young Master He smiled smugly and looked Ding Nan up and down greedily. His gaze made Ding Nan feel itchy and numb all over, as if she was naked from head to toe. Ding Nan's face was pale. She screamed in despair, don't touch me. I'd rather die than let you touch a single hair on me. Zhou Qin snorted and sneered. She quickly walked to the balcony of the suite and pushed the balcony open. She shouted, you want to die? That's easy. If you really want to keep your chastity now, you can barely get up and jump down from here. This is the 15th floor. If you jump down, you will definitely die. Do you have the guts? Ding Nan's voice suddenly became hoarse. Her dignity was trampled to pieces by Zhou Qin in an instant. Zhou Qin stared at Ding Nan coldly. She sneered and said, shout as loud as you can. No one will come to save you even if you shout yourself hoarse. After that, she took her handbag and walked to the door. The moment she walked to the door and opened it, Zhou Qin heard a hysterical, heart-wrenching curse coming from behind her. The voice and tone were so resentful that it was like the blood in the depths of hell that could not be melted. "Zhou Qin, you will die a horrible death. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost." Ding Nan's loud roar came from behind Zhou Qin, as well as the sound of her fighting with young Master He. Zhou Qin had never been afraid of any form of threat. She sneered and was about to close the door, but just as the door was about to close, a desperate cry came from the room, "Get lost, you beast, don't touch me." Beast? Zhou Qin's heart suddenly trembled. Her mind instantly flashed with Ding Nan's desperate and fearful expression at the moment she fell from the rooftop, and the words that Li Yundong had said when he was teaching Er Lu a lesson: "A person needs to have a trace of Buddha's heart." If a person doesn't even have a trace of Buddha's heart, what's the difference between him and a beast? Zhou Qin hesitated. Although she had done such a thing under the condition of self-defense, she could face the cold and cruel monster hidden deep in her heart, but she could not face the boy with a pure and innocent smile. If Li Yundong finds out about this in the future, what will he think of me? Will he think that I am a beast without a trace of Buddha's heart? Zhou Qin suddenly shivered. She gritted her teeth, pushed the door open, and walked in again. She shouted resolutely, "Stop!" Someone asked me, didn't I say that it was the third watch on the second, fourth, and sixth watch? Why didn't I update it yesterday? Alas, I'm so helpless. Why do I always have to explain this problem? I've already explained it countless times. Didn't I explain it at the end of the chapter? The number of eruptions per week is calculated according to the fresh flowers list. If I rank 10th on the fresh flowers list, I will erupt once next week, 9th will erupt twice, and so on. Last week it was 8th, so it was the third watch on the 2nd, 4th, and 6th watch. He was 9th last week, so he had 2 breakouts this week. If he was 10th this week, he would only have 1 breakout next week. If he didn't make it into the rankings, he wouldn't have a breakout. Please, next time don't ask again. Read my message at the end of the chapter. Please, thank you very much. Tang Tang, I cupped my hands and bowed. Finally, there will be 2 eruptions this week, on Tuesday and Saturday. So, tomorrow will be the third watch, and it will be a big night. /om/. Chapter 153. Go to Watch Network. Zhou Qin's shout stunned young Master He, who was trying his best to peel off Ding Nan's clothes. He raised his head and looked at Zhou Qin in confusion. What's wrong? Zhou Qin said with a cold face, let her go. Young Master He couldn't help but be furious. He let go of Ding Nan, whose clothes were in a mess, and stood up. What are you doing? Didn't we agree? Before he could finish speaking, Zhou Qin slapped him and said fiercely, I'm going back on my word, okay? As she spoke, she helped Ding Nan up and walked out step by step. Young Master He was the only one left sitting on the ground, covering his face and staring at the backs of the 2 of them as they left. Ding Nan's face was covered in tears. Her feet were weak, and her body swayed with every step she took. She looked very weak. Although she had been rescued by Zhou Qin, she still gritted her teeth and said, Zhou Qin, don't think that I will be grateful to you for this. Zhou Qin snorted and said, who cares about your gratitude? Ding Nan said in a venomous voice, if I have another chance, I will do something to you again. Listen up. Zhou Qin replied coldly, if you have any means, just use them. I'll take them. Zhou Qin carried Ding Nan to the door of the elevator. She suddenly stopped and stood still. After thinking for a moment, she walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the 18th floor. When they reached the 18th floor, Zhou Qin called the waiter over and handed her a gold card. Get a room for me. As soon as the waiter saw the gold card, she immediately said respectfully, hello, you need to bring your ID card to the hall. Before she could finish her words, Zhou Qin glared at her fiercely. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Just open the door. The waiter shivered. She was intimidated by Zhou Qin's domineering aura and did not dare to say anything more. She had no choice but to take action first and ask for permission later. She took Zhou Qin to a room and then left the room. With a bitter face, she picked up the walkie-talkie and reported the matter to the front desk in the hall. 7 K.O.M. Zhou Qin left Ding Nan in the room. She wanted to leave, but she was afraid that young master he would get the news and come back to find her. So she sat alone in the seat, lost in thought. Her gaze was sometimes sharp, sometimes gentle, sometimes confused, and sometimes sad. No one knew what this shrewd girl was thinking. On the 15th floor, young master he, who had watched Zhou Qin and Ding Nan leave, sat on the ground in a daze. His gaze gradually became sinister and resentful. His chest was heaving violently, and his face was purplish red. After a while, he suddenly jumped up from the ground and roared like a hysterical beast. Zhou Qin, why do you always have to make things difficult for me? Young master he smashed everything in the room that could be smashed. Teacups, teapots, phones, lamps. After he smashed a chair until it fell apart, he suddenly crazily smashed the chair towards the plasma TV hanging on the wall. As he smashed it, he let out a beast-like howl, which made one's hair stand on end. The waiter on this floor heard the sound and rushed over to take a look. She was immediately frightened by young master he's crazy look. She did not even dare to persuade him and immediately used the walkie-talkie to inform the manager. When the manager rushed over, the spacious suite had already become like a red guard crossing the border. Young master he was holding a chair leg in his hand, panting heavily. Young master he, what's wrong with you? The manager asked carefully in a low voice. Young master he turned his head abruptly, his eyes bloodshot. He grinned sinisterly and said, what's wrong? I'm so cheap. F***ck. Calm down, young master he. Your health is important. It's not worth it to get angry and ruin your health. The manager said with an apologetic smile and handed him a cigarette. Young master he did not even look at it. He slapped the cigarette away. Get lost. Don't make things difficult for me here. The lobby manager usually wanted to curry favor with someone like young master he, but he could not. Today, he finally got an opportunity, so how could he leave so easily? He said with a fawning smile, young master he, tell me which person offended you. I'll help you take care of him. Young master he turned his face and sized him up. He said with a face full of disdain, you? Forget it, he can kill you with one finger. The lobby manager was not angry. He nodded and bowed with a smile. Yes, I'm just a small fry. In the eyes of big shots like you, I'm naturally nothing. However, when it comes to young master he, I can still do something. Go to the internet. 7 K.O.M. He tugged at his collar and said impatiently, cut the crap. Find me 2 girls. I want fresh ones. I'm tired of playing with the waiters here. That's enough nonsense. Find me 2 girls. I want fresh ones. I'm tired of playing with the waiters here. Ding Nan's face turned red. The lobby manager leaned over with a smile and whispered in his ear. Young master he's eyes lit up. Sisters? Not bad, let them come over. The lobby manager immediately smiled and said, okay, I'll go tell them now. As he spoke, he quickly walked out of the door. But after a while, he said with a troubled expression, young master he, they don't want to come. Young master he immediately jumped up and cursed, are you F***king kidding me? How dare you say this to me? The lobby manager said with a troubled expression, these 2 sisters are just college students who came here to do temporary work. They've only been here for a day. If they say they don't want to come, I can't force them. Young master he pointed at the lobby manager's nose and scolded, F***cku, 99 out of 100 women in your building are prostitutes. Don't I know how many prostitutes there are? Without me protecting you, can you be so carefree in Tiannan City? *CK, now that I asked you to do something, you're so noisy. Don't you want to stay here anymore? I don't care if you cheat, rob, coax, or pull. Anyway, get them here for me. The lobby manager was shocked and quickly replied, okay. I'll go now. With that, he slipped out of the door. In the hall downstairs, Li Yundong and Su Chan ate a lot of desserts without a care in the world. It wasn't until their stomachs were round that they burped at the same time. They looked at each other and smiled. Only then did they stop eating. Li Yundong looked at Su Chan and smiled as he reached out to touch the little girl's slightly bulging belly. Girl, how many months old are you? Su Chan did not dodge. Instead, she said in an enchanting and coquettish voice, it's been 3 months. Sir, you have to be responsible for me. Li Yundong deliberately pretended to be surprised. He bent down and pressed his ear against the little girl's belly. Oh, it's been 3 months. Let me hear it. Do you know how to kick now? Su Chan giggled and shrank back. Idiot, it's only the size of a thumb for 3 months. You can't see it from the outside at all. Li Yundong straightened up, nodded to Su Chan, and said with a smirk, you know a lot. It seems that you have experience. Tell me honestly, whose child is it? After that, he rushed over and held the little girl in his arms. Being hugged by Li Yundong, Su Chan suddenly felt hot all over. She turned her head and said shyly and angrily with the corners of her eyes, let go, so many people are watching. Li Yundong looked up and saw that many people around were looking at the two of them in a daze. Some of the women who had wanted to talk to Li Yundong had also stopped in their tracks. Not far away, Guo Peng looked at the intimate and playful appearance of Li Yundong and Su Chan. He only felt sour in his heart, jealous and hateful at the same time. Why did he have such a beautiful girl by his side? Why were 9 out of 10 women in the hall looking at him? Humph. I can't stay here any longer. Are you leaving? Guo Peng laughed coldly and said to Sherneng, who was beside him. At this time, Sherneng had already made a simple treatment for the wound on his finger. He had been staring at Li Yundong, his eyes full of doubt and awe. Seeing that he was not moving, Guo Peng snorted and was about to leave, but at this moment, a figure suddenly attracted his attention. Guo Peng's mind buzzed. There's actually such a beautiful woman in the world. It was a woman in a long white dress. She was slender and graceful, and her body seemed to be shrouded in a cloud of thin white mist, looking hazy and illusory. She only showed one side of her face, but anyone who saw this half of her face seemed to have lost their souls. They stared at her in a daze, unable to move their eyes away. In their hearts, they were both amazed and confused. What does such a beautiful woman look like? As a martial artist, Sherneng knew the harm that women could do to their bodies, so he had never been close to women. However, when he saw this woman, he was still shocked and his mind went blank. Not only the two of them, but all the people in the hall stopped talking for a moment. Everyone's eyes were focused on this woman. They were all shocked by her beauty and collectively lost their voices. Even Li Yundong, who was talking and laughing with Su Chan, noticed the abnormality around him. He looked around and found that everyone was looking behind him. He turned his head in confusion, and his eyes widened in an instant. A thought flashed through his mind uncontrollably. Is this woman a fairy who has descended to earth? How could she be so beautiful? Su Chan, who was beside Li Yundong, also curiously poked her head out to take a look. This time, Su Chan was scared out of her wits. Her teeth were chattering, and she shouted loudly and fearfully in her heart, how could it be her? How could she chase after me? After all, Li Yundong had succeeded in qi refining and his mind was firm. Although he was shocked by Zi Yuan's appearance at first, he quickly reacted. He felt Su Chan trembling slightly behind him, so he couldn't help turning his head to look at her. He saw Su Chan clutching his clothes tightly, as if she was afraid that he would run away. The little girl stared at Zi Yuan in fear, as if she had seen the most terrifying devil in the world. Li Yundong asked in confusion, "What's wrong with you?" Su Chan said in a trembling voice, "This is Zhenren Zi Yuan, the eldest Shiji of the Linggong sect of Zhenyi school. She reached the Yuanying phase at the age of 20. She is the strongest master of the younger generation in the cultivation world. She's here to catch me, /om/. Chapter 154. Go to watch net. Su Chan's words stunned him. He really couldn't associate the title of the strongest master of the younger generation in the cultivation world with the stunning woman in front of him. Watch net. 7 KOM. Zi Yuan was wearing a pure white long dress. It could be said that it was classical, but it also looked very modern. If it were any other woman wearing this dress, no one would pay much attention to her. But if it was very modern, it just happened that this dress exuded an antique feeling when worn by her. It was as if there was a faint scent of sandalwood and books lingering around this woman, curling up in spirals and not dissipating. It was an antique scent, and every movement she made had a kind of indifferent and elegant aura. With every step she took, the same sentence flashed through the minds of the people around her: wave like micro steps, silk socks create dust. Li Yundong couldn't help taking a step back. He was not shocked by Zi Yuan's name, but by this woman's beautiful appearance and ethereal temperament. He couldn't help thinking, this woman must be a fairy from heaven who has fallen into the mortal world. Otherwise, why didn't he have the slightest aura of the mortal world? Zi Yuan stared at Li Yundong intently. She stopped in her tracks, as if the trickling river had instantly solidified into a clear pool of water. It was cold and translucent, without any ripples, as if she had never moved at all. It was so peaceful and quiet that it made people feel peaceful and comfortable. Li Yundong? Her voice was melodious and pleasant to the ear, like the chirping of birds in the forest, which doubled the tranquil and ethereal feeling of her entire body. Although he knew that the woman in front of him was Su Chan's enemy, he was shocked to find that he couldn't feel any hostility in his heart. I am. Li Yundong looked at Zi Yuan warily. He leaned slightly to the side and protected Su Chan behind him. What do you want from me? Zi Yuan noticed his small movement. She smiled faintly and said, Don't be nervous. If I want to make a move, you and Su Chan won't have a chance to fight back. I'm not hostile, I just want to chat with you. If it had been anyone else who said this, Li Yundong would definitely have felt disgusted and wanted to compete with them. However, when Zi Yuan said this, Li Yundong felt that it was natural and right. What the hell? Li Yundong muttered in his heart, but he said, It's one thing whether you can beat me or not, but if you want to touch Su Chan, you'll have to step over my dead body. Su Chan poked her head out from behind Li Yundong and stared at Zi Yuan nervously. I stole the Renyuan Jindan, she said. Don't make trouble for Li Yundong. Li Yundong turned his head and glared at her. Shut up. Su Chan was startled by his words and immediately shrank her head back. But soon, she stiffened her neck and said stubbornly, That's right. I'll take responsibility for my own actions. Didn't you chase me for so long for the Renyuan Jindan? Zi Yuan smiled and said, Su Chan, if I wanted to catch you, how could I let you run so far? Besides, if it weren't for your master, with your ability, would you have been able to snatch the Renyuan Jindan? As she said this, Zi Yuan's eyes fell on Li Yundong again, and her eyes were full of curiosity and doubt. I came here to figure out one thing. To see the net. 7 KOM. Li Yundong stared at Zi Yuan closely, for fear that she would do something bad to Su Chan. He asked, What is it? Zi Yuan stared at Li Yundong, as if she was in a trance. She didn't speak, and for a moment, Li Yundong didn't know what to say. Everyone in the huge hall seemed to have been hit by a spell, and there was a pin-drop silence. After a while, Zi Yuan laughed and said, Sorry, I was distracted. As for what it is, you don't need to know. Even if you knew, you wouldn't understand. But what I want to tell you is that I'm not here to get the Rinyuan Jindan back. What's more, the Rinyuan Jindan has already been taken by you, so it's impossible for me to get it back. Li Yundong said, then what do you want? Zi Yuan looked around and said, let's go somewhere else. This is really not a good place to talk. As she said this, she walked out of the hall. Li Yundong pondered for a moment and followed her. Behind him, Su Chan grabbed his clothes tightly and shook her head vigorously. She looked frightened. Yundong, don't go. She must want to lure you to a place with fewer people so that she can attack you. Li Yundong laughed and stroked Su Chan's cheek lovingly. Little fool, there are some things that can't be avoided. Wait here, I'll go and have a look. There are many people here, so I don't think she will do anything to you. To see the net. 7 K.O.M. Su Chan refused to let go. She wrapped her arms tightly around Li Yundong's and shook her head like a rattle. No, I want to go with you. You can't leave me behind. Have you forgotten that we pinky promise? As she said this, Su Chan stretched out her little finger and looked at Li Yundong eagerly. Pinky promise for 100 years. Don't change, you said it. Li Yundong's heart warmed. He stretched out his hand and hooked his finger with the little girl's, saying, you silly girl, if something goes wrong later, don't worry about me. Run away first. Do you hear me? Su Chan nodded hard, but in her heart, she said, you want me to run first, but if I run away, you won't be by my side. Where can I go? I might as well accompany you to die together. Li Yundong saw the heroic expression on the little girl's face, and he more or less guessed what Su Chan was thinking. He didn't say anything, just smiled, and then followed Zi Yuan out. Although Zi Yuan didn't see Li Yundong walking in front, she was a cultivator with great shintong. With the heavenly eye in the back of her head, she could clearly see what was happening behind her. When she saw Li Yundong and Su Chan's entangled appearance, she sighed in her heart, what a love fool. After leaving the gate of the Xingyuan Hotel, Li Yundong followed Zi Yuan for a while and came to the street behind the Xingyuan Hotel. Seeing that there were not many people around, he stopped and said, what do you want from me? Just say it. Zi Yuan also stopped and said softly, last time, my shimmy came to see you, but you took away the magical item. Can you return it to me now? Your shimmy. Li Yundong was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted and said angrily, that crazy woman last time is your shimmy? You want me to return her magical item? No way. I haven't even settled the score with her for hurting Su Chan yet. Zi Yuan said with a smile, you also injured her soul and took away her magical item. Isn't that even? You should know that if a cultivator's magical item is taken away, it will be a great shame. It's better to get rid of the enmity than to keep it alive. What do you think? Li Yundong sneered and said, it's not that I deliberately went to take her magical item. It was she who came to us to make trouble. Her magical item was taken away and her soul was injured. That was what she asked for. It has nothing to do with me. Zi Yuan said, but humans and demons can't coexist. You have a fox spirit as your companion. As a cultivator, you have the obligation and responsibility to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. Hong Ling's action is understandable. When Li Yundong heard this, he immediately became furious. *T, *T. What do you mean by humans and demons can't coexist? Su Chan has never hurt anyone. I like her, and she likes me. How is it any of your business that we want to be together? He thought. Are you guys so bored that your balls hurt? They don't have balls. Su Chan whispered from behind Li Yundong. Li Yundong almost burst out laughing when he heard this. He turned his head and glared at Su Chan, making her stick out her bright red tongue. Only then did he turn his face away. Zi Yuan didn't seem to see their little movements. She still asked calmly, Then what do you want to do for you to return my shimmy's magical item to me? Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, ask her to apologize to me and Su Chan and never harass us again. Then I'll return it to you. Zi Yuan thought for a moment and shook her head slightly. With my shimmy's temper, she won't apologize. How about this, I apologize on her behalf, okay? Li Yundong was about to open his mouth to speak, but Su Chan, who was behind him, tugged at his clothes and whispered, Yundong, give that magical item back to her. Zi Yuan has a very high reputation in the cultivation world. She never apologizes to anyone. It's not easy for her to say such a thing today. Moreover, Jingyi school is very powerful. It's better not to offend them. Li Yundong retorted, does being powerful mean you can oppress others? If you're reasonable, you can go anywhere in the world. If you're unreasonable, you can't do anything. This matter was originally their fault. They ignored so many unfair things in the world and insisted on meddling in our business. They even said that they were enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Li Yundong sneered and said to Zi Yuan, everyone should be responsible for what they have done. Whoever did something wrong should apologize. What's the point of you apologizing on her behalf? As soon as he finished speaking, Wan Hongling suddenly appeared beside Zi Yuan out of thin air and shouted angrily, Sister Zi Yuan, why are you wasting time with such a person? You even want to apologize. Aren't you afraid of losing the face of our Jingyi school's Linggong sect? Besides, I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I apologize? As soon as Li Yundong saw the girl who had injured Su Chan and almost caused him to be separated from her, he suddenly became angry and became bold. He was full of anger and glared at Wan Hongling fiercely. You're still in the right. Well, if you have any means, just come at me. I want to see what your so-called Jingyi school can do. As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves and looked like he was ready to fight. Su Chan whispered behind him, Yundong, use the Divine Thunder Talisman. Zi Yuan saw that as soon as Wan Hongling and Li Yundong met, sparks immediately flew in all directions. It was really like when enemies met, their eyes were exceptionally red. She couldn't help but feel a headache. She looked at Wan Hongling reproachfully and asked, why are you following me? Wan Hongling said angrily, if I don't follow you, you will lose the face of Jingyi school and our Linggong sect. Zi Yuan couldn't help but say angrily, how dare you talk to me like that? Wan Hongling had lived under Zi Yuan's wing for many years and had accumulated a deep prestige. Her heart suddenly trembled and she didn't dare to say another word. She just turned her face away and snorted. Isn't that so? Zi Yuan couldn't help but say coldly, if you still regard me as your Shiji, apologize immediately. Don't you want your magical item? Wan Hongling turned her head abruptly, as if she couldn't believe her ears. She cried out in shock and surprise, Sister Zi Yuan, are you crazy or possessed? How dare you ask me to apologize to him? What did I do wrong? Wan Hongling stared at Li Yundong with incomparable hatred and said through gritted teeth, I'll pretend that I never had the magical item. Keep it for yourself. I'd rather die than apologize to you. Li Yundong sneered and was about to speak when suddenly an Audi A6 drove over from the side of the road. The car stopped by the side of the road and the window rolled down. A beautiful woman peeked out from inside. It was Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong, then at Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and Wan Hongling. She asked in confusion, Li Yundong, what are you doing here, /OM/? Chapter 155. Go to CNET. Zhou Qin's appearance greatly eased the smoky scene. Li Yundong glanced at Wan Hongling and snorted. Nothing, but what are you doing here? I seem to have seen Ding Nan before. An unnatural look flashed across Zhou Qin's face. Well, I made an appointment to meet her here to talk about something. Go to CNET. Zhou Qin quickly changed the subject. Who are these two? Your friends? Li Yundong sneered. How could I have such friends? Aren't you afraid of shortening your life? Wan Hongling was furious. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Zi Yuan glaring at her majestically. Wan Hongling stomped her feet angrily and shouted at Zi Yuan, "Do you care so much about that psalm? Sister Zi Yuan, I am your shimmy. Will you help him or not? Is the successor of Jin Dan so important to you?" As soon as these words came out, Zi Yuan's Taoist heart was in chaos. She glared at Wan Hongling angrily. Li Yundong and Su Chan looked at each other, not knowing what Wan Hongling meant. Zhou Qin was even more confused and asked in confusion, "What are you talking about?" Li Yundong whispered to Zhou Qin, "This is none of your business. Leave first. Don't get involved." Zhou Qin became more and more confused, but she was a very curious girl. As soon as she heard Li Yundong's words, she got out of the car and looked at Wan Hongling and Zi Yuan warily. What are they going to do? Is there any trouble? Do you need help? Before Li Yundong could speak, Wan Hongling shouted at Zhou Qin like a firecracker, "Get out of here. This is none of your business." Li Yundong was furious. He turned to Wan Hongling and said, "Be polite with your words." Wan Hongling rolled up her sleeves and was about to rush over aggressively. "I'm not going to be polite with you." Li Yundong also clenched his fists, his fingers cracking. "Well, don't think that I won't beat you just because you are a girl. Today, I will discipline you on behalf of your parents." Just as the two of them were about to make a move, they suddenly heard the sound of a heavy object hitting the ground. Everyone was stunned. They turned around and saw a girl lying on the ground in a pool of blood 3 or 4 meters away. The girl was wearing the waiter's uniform of Xingyuan Hotel. Her clothes were untidy, and her face was facing down. Although Li Yundong couldn't see her face clearly, he could clearly see the red headband on the girl's head because the waiter's hat had fallen off. This is Deng Yu? Li Yundong's pupils instantly dilated. He felt as if someone had smashed his chest with a hammer, and his whole body shook. Wan Hongling also stopped fighting with Li Yundong for a moment. She quickly walked over to the girl with Zi Yuan, took a look, and shook her head. There's no hope. Li Yundong's heart trembled as he walked closer to take a look. Sure enough, he saw Deng Yu lying in a pool of blood. His eyes were wide open, and blood kept bubbling out of his mouth. Watch net. 7KOM. Rainbow ** literature _learning% super #speed. Update. What's going on? Li Yundong only felt that his hair was about to stand on end, and an inexplicable feeling filled his heart, moving, manic. Deng Yu's eyes moved. Before she died, she saw Li Yundong and forced a smile, her lips wriggling. At this moment, Li Yundong seemed to see the cunning smile of the girl in the cafeteria at noon. If I wanted to say something, I wouldn't say it here. There are so many beautiful women here, and the pressure is too great. However, now Deng Yu couldn't say it even if she wanted to. Li Yundong's lips trembled. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a heart-wrenching cry coming from above his head. Everyone immediately looked up. On the balcony of Xingyuan Hotel, a girl was lying on the balcony railing, crying loudly with her hair disheveled. Li Yundong's eyesight was very strong, and he recognized at a glance that the girl was wearing a blue headband. It was Deng Yu's sister, Deng Jiao. At this time, a man came out of the room, pulled her up with one hand, and looked down. With this, Li Yundong immediately understood something. He was so angry that he seemed to be about to explode. He roared, "Young master he." Although they were separated by 15 floors and 20 to 30 meters, young master he could still clearly feel Li Yundong's boiling murderous intent and his sharp gaze. Li Yundong glared at him from below. It was as if his gaze was real, and it made young master he's heart beat wildly. He didn't dare to look at her anymore. He dragged Deng Jiao into the room and roared like a frightened beast, "Is your sister crazy? Why is she courting death? Deng Jiao's face was covered in tears. The eyes of this usually shy girl were fierce and resentful like a demon from hell. She stared at young Master He without saying a word. She bit her lips hard with her teeth, and blood flowed down the corner of her mouth. She suddenly roared and pounced on young Master He, biting his forearm tightly. Go to the internet. 7 K.O.M. Young Master He let out a miserable howl and struggled crazily, pushing Deng Jiao with all his might. Deng Jiao bit off a piece of flesh from young Master He's forearm. Her body was also pushed by young Master He, and she took 3 steps back and hit the balcony. She lost her balance. Young Master He was scared out of his wits. He subconsciously stretched out his hand, and Deng Jiao instantly disappeared from the edge of the balcony. After Li Yundong saw young Master He immediately ran into the hotel angrily. Su Chan immediately followed him. Zhou Qin was shocked by this sudden scene. She subconsciously chased after Li Yundong and shouted, "Li Yundong, calm down." Ruan Hongling and Zi Yuan looked at each other. Zi Yuan said in a deep voice, "Let's go and take a look." Just as the two of them turned around and left, they suddenly heard the dull sound of someone falling from the building behind them. This time, the air seemed to have frozen. Li Yundong immediately froze in place like a statue, motionless. However, his quiet back made Zhou Qin and Su Chan feel even more terrified. This boy was like a volcano that was about to erupt and a tsunami that was about to come. The air was filled with an extremely terrifying anger. Li Yundong's whole body trembled slightly because of his anger. He turned his face, and his eyes were filled with blood vessels that were about to burst out of anger. He saw Deng Jiao, who had fallen next to Deng Yu, and suddenly, it was as if a flame had brushed past his chest. He instantly exploded, pointed at young Master He's residence on the 15th floor, and shouted, "Young Master He, you beast! You will die a horrible death." Young Master He trembled all over as he listened to the murderous and terrifying voice in the room. He was afraid, he was terrified. He didn't know why he had caused such a terrible thing by playing with 2 girls. Why? Why was this happening? Young Master He paced back and forth in the room like a mad beast. His back was drenched in cold sweat. No, I have to get out of here quickly. This lunatic will kill me. I will die. A person like me shouldn't bother with such a commoner. Young Master He shuddered when he thought of the terrifying power that Li Yundong had displayed at the school gate last time. As soon as he made up his mind, young Master He took his car key and rushed out of the door. But as soon as he left the door, he immediately turned around and went back to his room. He took out a Type 54 pistol from under his pillow and hid it on his body. At the bottom of the Xingyuan Hotel, Li Yundong was about to go upstairs to catch young Master He with a murderous look, but he was stopped by Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin advised him loudly, "Li Yundong, this matter should be left to the police. Don't be impulsive. You will get yourself into trouble." Li Yundong was furious. Police? What else can the police do other than protect powerful people like you? Zhou Qin felt a sharp pain in her heart. She subconsciously wanted to turn around and leave, but she gritted her teeth and continued to persuade him earnestly. "What can you do even if you find him? Don't worry, leave it to me. I will make him pay for what he deserves. You have to think about Su Chan. If you go in, what will happen to her in the future?" But just as he was about to say something, a black BMW suddenly burst out of the parking lot next to the Xingyuan Hotel with a loud bang. The car sped from the crosswalk to the road like a runaway wild horse. A pregnant woman, who didn't dodge in time, was instantly hit and sent flying. Li Yundong's anger subsided as soon as he heard Su Chan's name. But just as he was about to say something, a black BMW suddenly burst out of the parking lot next to the Xingyuan Hotel. Zhou Qin was stunned. The first thing she saw was the car and its license plate. She subconsciously said, "Young Master He?" Li Yundong's anger, which had just subsided, suddenly flared up again. He was so angry that his eyes were about to split open. With a loud roar, his body rushed out like a cannonball and crazily chased after young Master He's car. Su Chan was stunned and immediately chased after him. At this time, there was also a flash of anger in Zi Yuan and Ruan Hongling's eyes. Ruan Hongling shouted angrily, "Damn it, who is this? So hateful. He deserves to be killed." Zi Yuan glanced at her, suppressed her anger, and said, "Cultivators don't care about worldly affairs." Ruan Hongling said angrily, "Then what should we do now?" Zi Yuan thought for a moment and said, "Go and collect the souls of these two sisters first. After I return to the mountain, I will use the 5 days' rain and dew lotus to rebuild their bodies." Young Master He drove the BMW and stepped on the accelerator, pressing the horn crazily. He didn't even realize that he had hit someone. In his mind, he only wanted to escape as far away as possible, as far away from Li Yundong as possible. When young Master He drove into the main road, he subconsciously looked up at the rearview mirror and immediately saw a figure quickly chasing after him. It didn't matter when he saw it, but young Master He was scared out of his wits. He suddenly turned his head back and saw Li Yundong chasing after him with a ferocious expression and a murderous aura. He was like a demon who wanted to take his life. Young Master He's entire body was trembling. He smacked the horn crazily and urged the car in front of him to move quickly. However, there was a red light in front of him and a long line of cars were parked there. How could he move? Young Master He gritted his teeth, stepped on the accelerator, and fiercely turned the steering wheel. The car turned into the wrong lane and sped all the way. Li Yundong felt as if there was a ball of fire burning in his chest. It was as if there was a high-speed motor in his body that was crazily transporting qi and blood to his internal organs and 2 thighs. He was like a crazy beast, chasing after the black BMW on the road. Li Yundong's legs were like scissors that were constantly crossing at high speed. Every time he took a step, the ground seemed to tremble. He saw that the black BMW was getting closer and closer, and the anger in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Suddenly, the black BMW made a sharp turn and sped in the opposite direction of the road. Li Yundong jumped to the back of the car that was turning around and reached out to grab it. This claw was really like a steel claw. His 5 fingers forcefully dug into the iron cover of the back cover of the car. With a tearing sound, he forcefully dug out 5 deep fingerprints on the iron cover. When young Master He heard the sound coming from behind the car, his heart was beating wildly in fear. He stepped on the accelerator crazily, and a hysterical roar came from the BMW. There was even a puff of smoke coming from the front cover of the car. Li Yundong only felt a huge force pulling him forward. "You want to run?" Li Yundong roared and sank his qi into his dantian. He lowered his legs and exerted force from his waist. His 5 fingers, which were like steel claws, forcefully tore off the back seat cover of the car like a piece of paper. At this moment, the BMW was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins and instantly ran away. Li Yundong threw the iron plate on the back of the car to the ground. He didn't care about shocking the world and chased after it with a roar. /OM/. Chapter 156. Go to Watch Network. Young Master He drove on the wrong side of the road. For a moment, he ran amok, and the people on the road were thrown into a mess. Li Yundong chased after him relentlessly, and the anger in his heart burned stronger and stronger. Go to C. 7 KOM. Super_speed. More. New. There was only one thought in his mind: chase after him, chase after him. Su Chan, who had been following closely behind, looked at Li Yundong's back worriedly. She wanted to persuade him, but she had never seen Li Yundong so angry before. Just as the words she wanted to say were about to come out of her mouth, she couldn't help but swallow them. At this time, there were the most people and cars on the road. Young Master He couldn't drive fast on the road, so he had no choice but to turn to a route with fewer cars. Unknowingly, he drove near Tiannan University. When he drove past Tiannan University and entered a street, an old woman happened to walk out of the alley, pushing a vegetable cart in her hand. Young master, he couldn't brake in time, and with a loud bang, the person and the cart were sent flying. The car also crashed into the side of the road and stopped. Young master, he was so scared that his entire body trembled. Young master, he was so scared that his entire body trembled. He propped himself up and wanted to see if the old woman was okay. He saw that the old woman had fallen to the ground and was struggling to stand up. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief and twisted the car key to continue escaping. Suddenly, a young man pounced over from the car door. It was Lu. He angrily smashed his car door. "You beast, how do you drive? You hit my mother." As he spoke, he turned his head to look at his mother and shouted, "Mom, are you okay?" Young master, he turned his head and looked back. He saw Li Yundong's small figure chasing after him like a ghost, and it was getting closer and closer. His body trembled, and he quickly took out all the money he had on him and threw it out. He shouted in horror, "Get out of the way, get out of the way." Lu reached in through the window and grabbed young master his steering wheel tightly. He shouted, "So what if you have money? Get out of the car. Don't even think about leaving." Young master, he didn't dare to get out of the car. He watched as Li Yundong, the Demon King, got closer and closer. He became more and more terrified and confused. All of a sudden, young master, his hand swept across a cold, hard object that was stuffed into his waist. His heart was suddenly filled with rage. He pulled out the gun at his waist, pointed it at Lu, and roared, "Get out of my way." Lu was a stubborn man. He roared, "How dare you? Shoot me if you have the guts. Get out of the car. If you don't send my mom to the hospital, don't even think about leaving." Young master, he kept turning around to look behind him. His back was drenched in sweat. His face was distorted as he roared hysterically, "Get out of my way, I'm really going to shoot." Lu also turned his head and followed young master his gaze. When he saw it, he immediately shouted in surprise and joy, "Benefactor." When young master, he heard these two words, his heart sank. These two people were in cahoots. Without any hesitation, he fired 3 consecutive shots at Lu. Lu's body trembled. He turned his head around as if he couldn't believe that the young man before him had the guts to pull the trigger. His body swayed and he looked down at the 3 bloody holes in his chest. His body softly fell to the ground. Watch net. 7 KOM. Young master, he forcefully pulled Lu's arm away from his car window and started the car with all his might. As soon as he stepped on the accelerator, he saw an old woman pouncing at the front of his car like a madwoman. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws. Her expression was crazy. "Give me back my son, you beast." Young master, he was so shocked by the old woman's crazy look that his entire body trembled. He unconsciously exerted force under his feet and the car rushed out with a roar. In an instant, the old woman disappeared in front of the car. Then, the car shook and ran over the old woman. "You asked for it, you asked for it." Young master, he cursed as if he had gone mad. Li Yundong witnessed all of this from behind. He was so angry that he was about to explode. He wished he could put a pair of wings on himself. But when he ran to the scene of the murder, young master his car was already more than 10 meters away. Lu had been shot 3 times and could not die immediately. He struggled on the ground and crawled towards his mother. As he crawled, he rubbed the ground with blood. With great difficulty, he crawled in front of his mother and checked her breath with his hand. Immediately, he let out a heart-wrenching cry, "Mom. B****, you deserve to be killed." Li Yundong was beyond angry. The aura all over his body was like a berserk beast as he roared. His 2 legs exerted force, and his body instantly soared into the air, forcibly jumping 5 or 6 meters away. Then, after landing like a meteorite, his two thighs suddenly kicked fiercely, and his body flew again with a rub. The furious Li Yundong's physical strength had reached an incredible level at this moment. He jumped forward at high speed like the Hulk in the movie. His legs were like two powerful steel springs, bouncing Li Yundong into the air and quickly chasing after young Master He. Li Yundong's figure was really terrifying during this crazy chase. Fortunately, this road was relatively remote and near the suburbs of the city. After chasing for a while, Li Yundong chased after young Master He out of the city. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. Seeing that Li Yundong was getting closer and closer, young Master He was so shocked that he was flustered. He stepped on the accelerator, but even so, Li Yundong was still getting closer and closer. In a panic, He Xiao leaned over and tried to shoot Li Yundong with his gun. But Zhao Yujin couldn't even hit Li Yundong at close range. He Xiao was driving and was more than 10 meters away, so how could he hit Li Yundong? Li Yundong didn't even dodge. His eyes were burning with anger as he stared straight at young Master He's car. His footsteps were getting faster and faster, as if he had installed 2 wind and fire wheels. Young Master He fired a few shots in a row but missed. When he pulled the trigger again, there was the sound of an empty chamber. He threw the gun away, and when he turned around again, he saw that he was already driving on the wrong side of the road. A car on the opposite side of the road was charging at him. Young Master He was so shocked that he jerked the steering wheel. The BMW squeaked and drew a crooked S-shaped arc on the road. This time, Li Yundong immediately caught up. Stop right there. When Li Yundong was chasing after him, he didn't dare to speak or even stop. It was because he was afraid that the qi in his body would dissipate the moment he opened his mouth, or that he would let young Master He escape if he stopped and started running again. But seeing that the BMW was right in front of him, Li Yundong couldn't hold it in anymore. He roared, bent over, grabbed the chassis of the BMW with both hands, and lifted it hard. The BMW immediately spun a few times in the air and flew out. It landed on the side of the road with a loud bang and kept rolling. After the BMW rolled for a while, it finally stopped. Young Master He, who was inside, didn't fall to his death. He only scratched a piece of skin on his forehead. He struggled out of the car and shouted desperately and crazily, "You dare to kill me? You dare to kill me?" Li Yundong clenched his fists tightly, and a terrifying murderous aura appeared in his eyes. "I don't dare to kill you." As he said this, he walked over and picked up young Master He with one hand. His eyes were so wide open that the corners of his eyes were about to crack. His voice was trembling with anger. "You heartless beast, how could you do it?" Young Master He roared loudly, "I didn't want to. They forced me. You forced me to do it." Li Yundong was furious. He raised his fist high. If he punched down, young Master He's head would be smashed like a tomato, and blood would splatter everywhere. But just as Li Yundong was about to punch him, Zhou Qin, who was following closely behind in the car, shouted in horror, "No, Li Yundong. If you kill him, you will also pay with your life." When Li Yundong heard the voice behind him, he suddenly turned his head and said with a terrifying look in his eyes, "Are you going to let him go just like that?" Zhou Qin didn't care about locking the car. She rushed to him and begged loudly, "Don't be impulsive. The law will punish him." With so many people seeing him cause the accident, he definitely won't be able to escape. While she was speaking, Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and Wan Hongling also arrived. There were also some cars parked by the side of the road, and a few people were pointing at them. Seeing that there were more and more people around, Li Yundong hesitated for a moment. He suddenly laughed wildly and said, "Ha ha ha, come and kill me. Do you dare to kill me? With so many people watching you, if you kill me, where can you go in the future?" Li Yundong was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Zhou Qin also scolded him loudly, "Young Master He, you are so crazy. Do you really think that there is no law in this world that can punish you? Young master, he jumped up and roared loudly, Law? What kind of law is the law? Let me tell you, I am the law in Tiannan City. I am the law. Who saw me cause the accident? Come out, who? Ruan Hongling had seen everything along the way. Although she had a grudge with Li Yundong, she couldn't help but say angrily, You have done so many evil things. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Struck by lightning? Young master, he was stunned for a moment when he heard this, but then he covered his stomach and laughed out loud, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Struck by lightning. He, ha 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 ha. I'm dying of laughter. Young master, he laughed wildly. He pointed to the sky and roared, God, I have done many evil things. Come and strike me to death. Young master, his arrogant voice spread far away, but the world was as calm as usual. There was no movement at all, only young master his wild laughter continued to ring out. Heaven was heartless and treated all living things as dogs. There were so many evil people in the world, but no one had ever seen God strike one to death. Everyone understood this, but everyone hoped that a bolt of lightning would fall from the sky and strike this beast to death. Ruan Hongling was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Just as she was about to step forward, she was stopped by Zi Yuan and said coldly, Stop. Have you forgotten the commandment that cultivators can't attack mortals? Ruan Hongling was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She shouted angrily, Don't be complacent. Sooner or later, God will take you away. Young master, he laughed even more wildly and said, God will take me away? Ha ha ha, God, I beg of you, please come and take me. Young master, he shouted like a hysterical madman for a while, but the sky was still calm as usual. Young master, he laughed wildly and said, Did you see that? God won't care about you people. God won't take me away. Li Yundong couldn't help it anymore. He shouted, If God doesn't take you away, I will, /om/. Chapter 157. Go to watch net. After Li Yundong roared, he suddenly raised his hand, holding a dim yellow paper talisman in his hand. At this time, the qi and blood in his body were surging. The paper talisman was also attracted by Li Yundong's huge Jindan's qi and began to emit a faint white light. Go to watch net. Hongom, 5 Thunder Righteous Talisman. Zi Yuan was so shocked that she shouted. At this moment, she thought of the saying. Once the Jindan appears, the mortal world is settled, and the thunder first rings, revealing the truth. Is this the truth of the psalm? Zi Yuan's mind was buzzing. She calmed down a little and couldn't help shouting, Li Yundong, cultivators can't attack mortals. Li Yundong turned his head angrily and roared, What **T rule? Zi Yuan shouted, For thousands of years, cultivators can't use magic on mortals. This is the iron law of the cultivation world. Those who violate it will suffer divine punishment. Li Yundong couldn't help laughing angrily. Ha ha ha, those who really do evil don't have to suffer divine punishment, but those who enforce justice on behalf of heaven have to suffer divine punishment. What kind of F***king rule is this? Although Ruan Hongling had a grudge against Li Yundong, she couldn't help but advise him loudly, heaven and earth have their own karma. If cultivators use magic to hurt mortals, they will attract divine punishment. Their souls will be shattered and they will not be able to reincarnate. Zi Yuan said in a deep voice, This iron law can't be broken by you. Stop. Li Yundong said angrily, I'm not a cultivator. I don't care about this **T rule. Zi Yuan also said angrily, as the successor of Jindan, you are only one step away from the Zhuji phase. How can you not be a cultivator? As long as the 5 Thunder Righteous Talisman in your hand is released, it will immediately violate the law of heaven and bring great shock and destruction to the cultivation world. As a cultivator, I absolutely can't tolerate such a thing happening. Li Yundong couldn't help but fly into a rage. He pointed at Zi Yuan and scolded, "I saw that you looked like a fairy, but I didn't expect you to be so cruel and cold-blooded. Tell me, what are you cultivating for? To become an immortal tortoise?" As he said this, he pointed at Wan Hongling and cursed, "And you don't deal with such scumbags in the world. You only know how to make trouble for me and Su Chan. Is this what you call a decent sect? Is this what you call a righteous person?" Li Yundong's angry roar echoed in everyone's ears like rolling thunder, shaking the hearts of everyone here. Watch net. Net. Super_speed. More. New, cultivation, 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 cultivation. What are you cultivating for? After witnessing such a thing with your own eyes, how can you turn around and walk away? What's the difference between you and beasts? Li Yundong spat on the ground. I really look down on you sanctimonious guys. He kept on talking about rules and heavenly laws, but he was actually thinking of himself, afraid that he would be implicated. After cultivating for a lifetime, if you can't help the weak and enforce justice on behalf of heaven, then what's the difference between you and a tortoise? Wan Hongling and Zi Yuan were dumbfounded by Li Yundong's scolding, especially Zi Yuan. She had been extremely talented in cultivation since she was a child. Although she was young, she had a great reputation in the cultivation world. When she traveled in the world, the leaders of other sects had to politely call her Zhenren Zi Yuan when they saw her. When had she ever been pointed at and scolded like this? However, Zi Yuan wanted to refute, but her heart suddenly trembled. Li Yundong's words had evoked a question in her heart that had been puzzling for a long time. What was the purpose of cultivation? Just for the sake of immortality? The more Li Yundong scolded, the angrier he became. The more he scolded, the more he couldn't control his emotions. He was furious and said, "How dare you say that you want to stop me? Touch your chests and see if they are warm. You are all as beautiful as flowers, but you are so cold-blooded. If God doesn't accept a beast like him, I will. You don't dare to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. Today, I, Li Yundong, will enforce justice on behalf of heaven." As he said this, Li Yundong's aura suddenly burst forth. The majestic yuanqi that he had accumulated for a long time suddenly rushed straight to the top of Li Yundong's head like the dam was opened. This aura was as majestic as the Milky Way pouring down, like a torrent surging, mighty and unstoppable, and instantly ran through all the meridians in Li Yundong's body. All the essence, qi, and blood in Li Yundong's body instantly gathered on the top of his head. The qi of the 5 internal organs in his body was also attracted by the Jindan's yuanqi and surged toward the top of his head. This was the qi rushing canopy. 3 flowers at the acupoint. 5 qis collecting in mind. After these majestic and powerful auras instantly gathered on the top of Li Yundong's head, they hit the Baihui acupoint on the top of his head. A white qi visible to the naked eye rose, condensed, and rushed straight into the sky. The divine thunder talisman in Li Yundong's hand felt his powerful Jindan's primordial qi and suddenly burned with a bang. Countless rune patterns flew out of the flames, surrounding the top of Li Yundong's head and soaring into the sky in an instant. In an instant, the color of heaven and earth suddenly changed. With a buzz, the sky darkened, and countless dark clouds quickly rushed over from the horizon. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds were rolling, and it was as if the sky had collapsed. It was almost impossible to see one's fingers in front of them. Boom! There was a dull sound of thunder rolling in the thick dark clouds. This kind of sound represented the strongest power in the world, the supreme judgment and majesty. Young master, he looked at the rolling clouds in the sky with his mouth agape. He was in a daze for a while, as if he didn't dare to imagine that there would really be a bolt of lightning in the sky. Suddenly, he was afraid and rushed toward Li Yundong like crazy. "Don't kill me." Li Yundong kicked him away and said angrily, "It's too late. A beast like you only knows how to repent now. Can you bring the dead back to life?" After that, Li Yundong pointed to the sky and shouted, His voice shook everything in the world as if it was trembling. Heavenly thunder. Boom. Kacha. A bolt of lightning suddenly flashed through the dark sky, instantly illuminating the dark world. In the eyes of everyone, Li Yundong's hair stood on end at this time. His expression was angry and mighty. His whole body was emitting a layer of dazzling golden light, as if a golden-armored warrior had descended from heaven to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. Li Yundong pointed at young Master He, who was lying limply on the ground. His words were like spring thunder, and he shouted wildly, "Kill evil!" Boom! A bolt of lightning fell from the sky in an instant, and this bolt of lightning instantly swallowed young Master He. In an instant, the world seemed to have become extremely bright, so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. They subconsciously closed their eyes. They only felt a sudden heat around them, as if the air was burning. After a long time, the surrounding people opened their eyes and saw that the sky had regained its brightness. There were bursts of green smoke around the big pit. The place where young Master He was located had been struck by lightning and a deep pit had been created. His body and soul had been destroyed, and there were no bones left. It was as if this person had never appeared. There was no ashes left. At this moment, the surroundings were extremely quiet. Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling looked at Li Yundong with an inexplicable gaze. Go to see the net. Zi Yuan's heart was extremely complicated. She looked at Li Yundong in a daze and couldn't say anything. Although Wan Hongling had always hated Li Yundong because of her grudge with him, she couldn't help but admire him at this time. How many cultivators were there in the world? But no cultivator had ever dared to do such a thing. But only this person in front of her dared to sacrifice himself to get rid of evil and enforce justice on behalf of heaven. At this time, Wan Hongling had even forgotten the grudge between her and Li Yundong. She had forgotten that Li Yundong had scolded her before. Her heart was filled with admiration and joy. She couldn't wait to cheer loudly and shout, "Good man, good courage." After Li Yundong used the Divine Thunder Talisman, he felt as if all the strength in his body had been used up in an instant. He stood there in a daze for a long time, and the anger and blood in his chest gradually calmed down. After a long time, he turned around and found that the little girl was looking at him with tears streaming down her face. Li Yundong forced a smile and said, "I always said that you were a troublemaker. Now, I've caused a big disaster." As a cultivator, Su Chan knew very well what terrible consequences there would be if she violated the law of heaven. The little girl was shocked and scared. She couldn't help but throw herself into Li Yundong's arms and cry loudly. "No, no, you didn't cause trouble. You are enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. God will be merciful and open his eyes." Li Yundong couldn't help but sneer and say, "God is merciful? God is merciful? If he were merciful, he would have put this crazy beast away just now." Su Chan quickly covered Li Yundong's mouth with her hand and said with a frightened expression, "You can't say it, you can't say it." Li Yundong forced a smile and said, "Silly girl, husband and wife are birds in the same forest. When disaster comes, they fly separately. Do you remember what I told you before? If there's something wrong, don't worry about me. Hurry up and go by yourself. It's better for one to die than two." As soon as Li Yundong finished speaking, Su Chan couldn't help but burst into tears and hugged Li Yundong tightly. "I won't go, I won't go. I can't do it without you." Li Yundong smiled and stroked the little girl's soft black hair. He said lovingly, "Stop it, girl. You used to live a good and happy life without me, didn't you?" Su Chan just kept shaking her head, tears rolling down her face. "No, I can't do it without you." Li Yundong held Su Chan with one hand and sighed softly. "Why didn't you persuade me just now? Maybe if you had persuaded me, I would have stopped." Su Chan raised her head, her eyes full of tears, and said in a choked voice, "I wanted to persuade you, but I thought that if I persuaded you to stop, you would be depressed and regretful when you thought about it in the future. You might even blame me. I would feel sad. You said that you didn't want to see me behave in the future, and I don't want to see you frowning and regretting every day. So I thought that when the divine tribulation came, I would risk my life to die with you. I've been happy with you for so many days, so it's not a big deal to die. Li Yundong's eyes were full of tears. He raised his head and sighed. You know me. Others say that you are a witch, but in my opinion, you are the most lovely and considerate woman in the world. How can I, Li Yundong, have a woman like you as a companion? As they spoke, the two of them looked at each other and smiled at the same time. The lingering affection in their eyes was so strong that it could not be dissolved. It was as if the divine tribulation would fall on their heads in the next second. It was no big deal. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.